Testing, testing, testing. Welcome back, guys, to Regaining the Balance. Today we are going to do the audiobook, the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm doing this because this definitely has a big place in much of the future videos and connections and various other things I'll be talking about that'll be coming up. So I just wanted to go ahead and read it. I think it's gonna be around 2 hours, something like that. So those of you that can stick with me, great. Otherwise, let's get to it here. And display, here we are. All right, so this is translated by Sri Swami Sivananda here. And let me just skip down just to the introduction so we get a little bit of a, let's see here, there we go. You guys get a little bit of a background. Okay, so the introduction here. Pardon me for the terrible pronunciation of some of these names. This one in particular is hard for me. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers. Dhritarashtra married Gandhari, and Pandu was married to Kunti and Madri. King Pandu was cursed for a sin while hunting, due to which he was not permitted to unite with his wife. Kunti got a boon through her sincere service of a wise sage in her younger age, and she begot 3 children, namely Yudhisthira, Bhima, and Arjuna, from Yama, Vayu, and Indra, respectively. Madri had twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, through the celestial physicians called Asvini Devatas. Dhritarashtra had 101 children by his wife Gandhari. Pandu passed away, and his sons, the Pandavas, were all brought up by the Dhritarashtra, along with his sons, known as the Kauravas. Now, these are going to be the 2 main rivals here in this story. The Pandavas and Kauravas grew up together, but due to the braveness and intelligence of the former, the Kauravas were unable to tolerate them. Hence, the Pandavas decided to live separately, sharing half of their kingdom. The Pandavas' pomp, wealth, and glory displayed during the Rajasuya Yajna aroused deep jealousy and greed in the mind of Duryodhana, the chief of the Kauravas, who, with the cunning advice of his uncle Sakuni, invited Yudhisthira to a game of dice and fraudulently defeated him, whereby all his wealth and possessions, including the Draupadi, were lost. Finally, it was settled that the Pandavas, including Draupadi, should repair to the forest for 12 years in exile, after which they had to live incognito for another year, untraced by the Kauravas. During this period, the kingdom was to be ruled by the wicked Duryodhana. Having successfully completed these 13 years of exile, facing many obstacles, dangers instigated by the Kauravas, the Pandavas, as per the terms of the agreement, approached the Kauravas for their share of the kingdom. Duryodhana, however, flatly refused to part with as much land as could be covered by the point of a needle. According to the advice of Mother Kunti and the inspiration of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas decided upon war and tried to establish their rightful claim on the kingdom by overcoming the Kauravas. Duryodhana and Arjuna, from the side of the Kauravas and Pandavas, respectively, were sent to Dwaraka to seek the help of Yadava hero Lord Krishna in the battle. They both found Krishna resting on a couch in his palace. Duryodhana went in and occupied a seat at the head of the couch, while Arjuna stood near the feet of the Lord. The moment Sri Krishna opened his eyes, he naturally saw Arjuna first, and then Duryodhana sitting on a chair. After inquiry of their welfare and the purpose of their visit, Sri Krishna, according to the prevailing custom, gave the first choice to Arjuna because of his age and also because of his sight of Arjuna first. Krishna asked Arjuna to fulfill his desire by selecting him unarmed or his powerful army called Narayani Sena. Arjuna, who was a devotee of Sri Krishna, expressed his desire to have the Lord with him, neglecting the powerful Narayani Sena, even though Krishna warned that he would remain a witness, bound by the vow of not participating in battle and not taking up arms. Duryodhana, with great delight, thinking that Arjuna was foolish, expressed his wish for the powerful army to help his side in the battle. When Krishna asked Arjuna why he chose him when he was not for taking up arms, Arjuna said, "O Lord, you have the power to destroy all the forces by a mere sight. Why then should I prefer that worthless army? I have for a long time been cherishing a desire in my heart that you should act as my charioteer. Kindly fulfill my desire in this war." The Lord, who is ever the most devoted lover of his devotees, accepted his request with pleasure. And thus Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna in the battle of Mahabharata. After the return of the Duryodhana and Arjuna from Dwaraka, Lord Krishna himself went once to Hastinapura as the emissary of the Pandavas and tried to prevent the war. But then, under the guidance of Sakuni, the egoistic Duryodhana refused to agree to the peace mission and tried to imprison Lord Krishna, at which Krishna showed his supreme form, Viswarupa. Even the blind Dhritarashtra saw it by the Lord's grace. King Dhritarashtra, due to his attachment to his sons, failed to control them, and the Kaurava chief Duryodhana, with vain hope, decided to meet the powerful Pandavas in war. When both sides were prepared to commence with the battle, the sage Veda Vyasa approached the blind Dhritarashtra and said, "If you wish to see this terrible carnage with your eyes, I can give you the gift of vision." The Kaurava king replied, "O chief of the Brahma Rishis, I have no desire to see with my own eyes this slaughter of my family, but I would like to hear all the details of the battle." Then the sage conferred the gift of divine vision to Sanjaya, the trusty counselor of the king, and told the king, "Sanjaya will describe to you all the incidents of the war. Whatever happens in the course of the war, he will directly see, hear, or otherwise come to know. Whether an incident takes place before his eyes or behind his back during the day or during the night privately or in public, and whether it is reduced to actual actions or appears only in thought, it will not remain hidden from his view. He will come to know everything exactly as it happens. No weapon will touch his body, nor will he feel tired." After the 10 days of continued war between the Pandavas and Kauravas, when the great warrior Bhishma was thrown down from his chariot by Arjuna, Sanjaya announces the news to Dhritarashtra. In agony, the king asks Sanjaya to narrate the full details of the previous 10 days' war, from the very beginning in detail as it happened. Here commences the Bhagavad Gita. Now, let me just double check that everything is running right here. Should be. I'm not sure why there's no chat, but I'm sorry about that, guys. I'll fix that for the next time. Okay, so everything is good. We are going to commence here and make it down. Okay, we're going to skip the prayers. Skipping the prayers still. Meditation on the Gita. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, the Yoga of the Despondency of Arjuna. Summary of the first discourse. The great Mahabharata war between the Pandavas and Kauravas took place on the holy plain of Kurukshetra. After the failure of Lord Krishna's peace mission when he himself went to Hastinapura as the emissary of the Pandavas, there was no other alternative for the Pandavas but to engage in war for their rightful share of the kingdom. All the famous warriors from both sides had assembled on the battlefield. Tents and wagons, weapons and machines, chariots and animals covered the vast plain. Lord Krishna arrived on the scene in a magnificent chariot yoked by white horses. He was to act as the charioteer of Arjuna, one of the Pandava princes. Actually. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess everything's working. Strange. Sorry, guys. I was kind of confusing myself here. Let's get back to this. Okay. All the famous warriors from both sides had assembled on the battlefield. Lord Krishna arrived on the scene in a magnificent chariot yoked by white horses. He was to act as the charioteer of Arjuna, one of the Pandava princes. The din of hundreds of conches blaring forth suddenly announced the commencement of the battle. Arjuna blew his conch Devadatta, while Bhima, his brother, sounded the paundra. All the other great warriors blew their respective conches. As the two armies were arrayed and ready for battle, Arjuna requested Krishna to place his chariot between them so that he might survey his opponents. He was bewildered by the scene before him, for he beheld on both sides fathers, grandfathers, teachers, and uncles, fathers-in-laws, grandsons, relatives, and comrades. Confusion reigned in Arjuna's mind. Should he participate in this terrible carnage? Was it proper to destroy one's relatives for the sake of a kingdom and some pleasures? Would it not be better for him to surrender everything in favor of his enemies and retire in peace? As these thoughts rushed into his mind, a feeling of despondency overtook Arjuna. He had no enthusiasm to engage in this battle. Letting his bow slip from his hands, Arjuna could do nothing but turn to Lord Krishna for guidance and enlightenment. Okay, so here we are. Here is Dhritarashtra. What did the sons of Pandu and also my people do when they had assembled together, eager for battle on the holy plain of Kurukshetra, O Sanjaya? Sanjaya says, having seen the army of the Pandavas drawn up in battle array, King Duryodhana then approached his teacher Drona and spoke these words. Quote, behold, O teacher, this mighty army of the sons of Pandu, arrayed by the son of Drupada, the wise disciple. Here are heroes, mighty archers, equal in battle to Bhima and Arjuna, Yuyudhana, Virata, Drupada of the great car, mighty warriors. Drishtakatu, Kekitana, and the valiant king Pasi, Purujit, and Kuntiboja, Saibya, the best of men. The strong, Yudhamanyu, the brave Uttamoajas, the son of Subhadra, the son of who is Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna, and the son of Draupadi, all of the great chariots, great heroes. Know also, O best among the twice born, the names of those who are the most distinguished amongst ourselves, the leaders of my army. These I name to thee for thy information. Thyself, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, and the victorious in war, Asvatthama, Vikarna, Jayadratha, and the son of Somadatta, and also many other heroes who have given up their lives for my sake, armed with various weapons and missiles, all well skilled in battle. This army of ours, marshaled by the Bhishma, is insufficient, whereas their army, marshaled by Bhima, is sufficient. Therefore, do ye all, stationed in your respective positions in the several divisions of the army, protect Bhishma alone. His glorious grandsire, Bhishma, the eldest of the Kauravas, in order to cheer Duryodhana, now roared like a lion and blew his conch. Then, following Bhishma, conches and kettle drums, tabors, drums and cow horns blared forth quite suddenly from the side of the Kauravas, and the sound was tremendous. Then also the Madhava, Krishna, and the son Pandu, Arjuna, seated in their magnificent chariot yoked white horses, blew their divine conches. Hrishikesa blew the Panchajanya, Arjuna blew the Devadatta, Bhima, the doer of the terrible deeds, blew the great conch Paundra. Yudhisthira, the son of Kunti, blew the Anatavyaja, Sahadeva and Nakula blew the Manipushpaka and the Sugosho conches. The king of Kasi, an excellent archer, Sikandi, and the mighty car warrior, Drishtadyumna and Virata and Sakyati, the conquered. And then a couple of other people. Let's see here. Drupada and the sons of Draupadi, a lord of the earth, the son of Subhadra, the mighty armed, all blew their respective conches. The tumultuous sound rent the hearts of Dhritarashtra's party, making both heaven and earth resound. Then, seeing all the people of Dhritarashtra's party standing arrayed in the discharge of weapons about to begin, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, whose ensign was that of the monkey, took up his bow and said the following to Krishna, O Lord of the earth, in the middle of the two armies, place my chariot, O Krishna, so that I may behold those who stand here, desirous to fight, and know whom I must fight when the battle begins. For I desire to observe those who are assembled here to fight, wishing to please in battle Duryodhana, the evil-minded. Being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna, having stationed that best of chariots, O Dhritarashtra, in the midst of the two armies. Excuse me. Being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna, having stationed that best of chariots, O Oh yeah, I already read that. In front of Bhishma, Drona and all the rulers of the earth said, quote, O Arjuna, behold, now all these Kurus gathered together, unquote. Then Arjuna beheld their stationed grandfathers and fathers and teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, and friends too. He saw fathers-in-law and friends also in both armies. The son of Kunti, Arjuna, seeing all these kinsmen standing arrayed, spoke thus sorrowfully, filled with deep pity. Seeing these, my kinsmen, O Krishna, I arrayed, eager to fight. My limbs fail and my mouth is parched up, my body quivers and my hair stand on end. The bow, Gandiva, slips from my hand and my skin burns all over. I am unable to stand, my mind is reeling as it were. And I see adverse omens, O Kesava. I do not see any good in killing my kinsmen in battle. For I desire neither victory, O Krishna, nor pleasures, nor kingdoms. Of what avail is dominion to us, O Krishna, or pleasures even in this life, or even life? Those for whose sake we desire kingdoms, enjoyments, and pleasures, standing here in battle, have renounced life and wealth. Teachers, fathers, sons, and also grandfathers, grandsons, fathers-in-laws, maternal uncles, brothers-in-laws, and relatives. These I do not wish to kill, though they kill me. O Krishna, even for the sake of dominion over the three worlds, leave alone killing them for the sake of the earth. By killing these sons of Dhritarashtra, what pleasures can be ours, O Janardana? Dana? Only sin will accrue by killing these felons. Therefore, we should not kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, our relatives, for how can we be happy by killing our own people, O Madhava, which is Krishna? Though they, with intelligence overpowered by greed, see no evil in the destruction of families and no sin in hostility to friends. Why should not we, who clearly see evil in the destruction of a family, learn to turn away from this sin, O Janardana? And there's a little commentary. It says, ignorance of the law is no excuse, and wanton sinful conduct is a crime unworthy of knowledgeable people. Continuing, in the destruction of a family, the immemorial religious rights of that family perish. On the destruction of spirituality, impiety overcomes the whole family. Another part of commentary, Dharma pertains to the duties and ceremonies practiced by the family in accordance with scriptural injunctions. Continuing, by prevalence of impiety, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and women becoming corrupt, O Varsneya, descendant of Vrishni, there arises intermingling of castes. Confusion of castes leads to hell, the slayers of the family, for their forefathers fall, deprived of the offerings of rice ball and water. By these evil deeds of the destroyers of the family, which cause confusion of castes, the internal religious rights of the caste and the family are destroyed. We have heard, O Janardana, that inevitable is the dwelling of for an unknown period in hell for those men in whose families the religious practices have been destroyed. Oh, excuse me. And this has a lot to do with, by the way, there's a very deep religious practice in India, which I believe they call the Mains, which is their ancestors. There's a lot of festivals and a lot of that kind of thing within that culture. Continuing, alas, we are involved in a great sin that we are prepared to kill our kinsmen through greed for the pleasures of a kingdom. If the son of Dhritarashtra, with weapons in hand, should slay me in battle, unresisting and unharmed, that would be better for me. And Sanjaya says, having thus spoken in the midst of the battlefield, Arjuna, casting away his bow and arrow, sat down on the seat of the chariot with his mind overwhelmed with sorrow. Hari Om Sat, or Tat Sat. Thus in the Upanishads of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, the science of the eternal, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends the first discourse. The second part is Sankhya Yoga, summary of the second discourse. Sanjaya explains the condition of Arjuna, who was agitated due to attachment and fear. Lord Krishna, rebuking him for his dejection, which was due to moha or attachment, and exhorts him to fight. After failing to convince Sri Krishna through his seemingly wise thoughts, Arjuna realizes his helplessness and surrenders himself completely to the Lord, seeking his guidance to get over the conflict of his mind. The Lord takes pity on him and proceeds to enlighten him by various means. He explains to Arjuna the imperishable nature of the Atman, for which there is no past, present, and future. The Atman never dies, therefore Arjuna should not grieve, as it transcends the five elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. It cannot be cut, burnt, or dried. It is unchanging and eternal. Everyone experiences conditions like pleasure, pain, heat, and cold due to contact of objects with the senses. The senses carry the sensation through the nerves of the mind. One should be able to withdraw the senses from objects like the tortoise, which withdraws all its limbs within. Krishna asserts that only one who has the capacity to be balanced in pleasure and pain alike is fit for immortality. Krishna goes on to tell Arjuna that if he refuses to fight and flees from the battle, people will be justified in condemning such action as unworthy of a warrior. Having taught Arjuna the immortal nature of the Atman, Lord Krishna turns to the performance of action without expectation of fruit. A man should not concern himself about the fruit of the action like gain and loss, victory and defeat. These are in the hands of the Lord. He should perform all action with a balanced mind, calmly enduring the pairs of opposites like heat and cold, pleasure and pain that inevitably manifest during action, or karma. Krishna advises Arjuna to fight free from desire or acquisition of kingdom or preservation of it. Arjuna is eager to know the characteristics of man who has a stable mind. Such a person, Krishna tells him, will have no desires at all, since he is content with having realized the self. He is entirely free from desires. The consciousness of the Atman and abandonment of desires are simultaneous experiences. The various qualities of the Chittaprajna, a stable-minded person, are described by the Lord. He will not be affected by adversity and will have no fear or anger. He will take things as they come and will not have any likes and dislikes. He will neither hug the world nor hate it. The man of stable mind will have perfect control of the senses. The senses are powerful and draw the mind outwards. One should therefore turn one's gaze within and realize God who resides in the heart. The yogi, having achieved a stable mind, remains steadfast even though all sense objects come to him. He is unmoved and lives a life of eternal peace. Krishna concludes that the eternal Brahmic state frees one from delusion forever. Even at the end of life, when one departs from this body, one does not lose consciousness of one's identity with Brahman, or God, in that case. So let's see here. I'm going to take a quick sip. Continuing, Sanjaya. To him who was thus overcome with pity and who was despondent with eyes full of tears and agitated, Krishna, or Madhusudana, the destroyer of Madhu, spoke these words. The blessed Lord said, Whence is this perilous strait come upon thee, this dejected, which is unworthy of thee, disgraceful, and which will close the gates of heaven upon thee, O Arjuna? Yield not to impotence, O Arjuna, son of Pritha. It does not befit thee. Cast off this mean weakness of the heart. Stand up, O scorcher of foes. How, O Madhusudana, shall I fight in battle with arrows against Bhishma and Drona, who are fit to be worshipped, O destroyers of enemies? Better it is indeed in this world to accept alms than to slay the most noble teachers, but if I kill them, even in the world all my enjoyments of wealth and desires will be stained with their blood. I can hardly tell which will be better, that we should conquer them or they should conquer us, even the sons of Dhritarashtra, after slaying whom we do not wish to live, standing facing us. My heart is overpowered by the taint of pity. My mind is confused as to duty. I ask thee, tell me decisively what is good for me. I am thy disciple. Instruct me, who has taken refuge in thee. I do not see that it would remove the sorrow that burns up in my senses, even if I should attain prosperous and unrivaled dominion on the earth or lordship over the gods. Excuse me. Having spoken thus to Rishikesa, Lord of the Senses, Arjuna, the conqueror of sleep, the destroyer of foes, said to Krishna, I will not fight, and became silent. To him who was despondent in the midst of the two armies, Sri Krishna, as if smiling, O Bharata, spoke these words. The blessed Lord said, Thou hast grieved for those that should not be grieved for, yet thou speakest words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead, nor at any time indeed was I not for these rulers of men, nor verily shall we ever cease to be hereafter. Now that's an interesting line here, guys, because any of you who know your your Bibles may recognize this line, nor at any time indeed was I not, meaning that Krishna has always existed from the very beginning. Just as I'm not mistaken, I can't think of the exact line in the Bible, but I'm not mistaken, Christ either refers to himself this way or someone else refers to him that way. I think he refers to himself that way, but just wanted to point that out. So continuing, just as in the body, the embodied soul passes into childhood, youth, and old age, so also does he pass into another body. The firm man does not grieve the, I'm not sure, I think he has a bit of a typo here. Let's see, the firm man does not grieve. Oh, thereat. Okay, sorry. The contacts of the senses with the objects, O son of Kunti, which cause heat and cold and pleasure and pain, have a beginning and an end. They are impermanent. Endure them bravely, O Arjuna. That firm man who surely these afflict not, O chief among them men, to whom pleasure and pain are the same, is fit for attaining immortality. The unreal hath no being. There is no non-being of the real. The truth about both has been seen by the knowers of the truth, or the seers of the essence. I almost read that as seen. And there's a bit of commentary. What is changing must always be unreal. What is constant or permanent must always be real. The Atman, or the eternal, all-pervading self, ever exists. It is the only reality. The phenomenal world of names, forms is ever changing. Names and forms are subject to decay and death. Hence, they are unreal or impermanent. Now, this whole idea of the Atman, the all-pervading self, is also represented in the Shiva worship, or Shaivism within Hinduism, just to point that out. Continuing, Krishna is continuing, know that to be indestructible, by whom all this is pervaded, none can cause the destruction of that, the imperishable. Commentary again, the self pervades all objects like ether. Even if the pot is broken, the ether that is within and without it cannot be destroyed. Similarly, if the bodies and other objects perish, the eternal self that pervades them cannot be destroyed. It is the living truth. Continuing, these bodies of the embodied self, which is eternal and indestructible and immeasurable, are said to have an end. Therefore, fight, O Arjuna. He who takes the self to be the slayer, and he who thinks he is slain, neither of them knows. He slays not, or he is slain. He is not born, nor does he ever die. After having been, he again ceases not to be. Unborn, eternal, changeless, and ancient. He is not killed when the body is killed. Whosoever knows him to be indestructible, eternal, unborn, inexhaustible, how can that man slay, O Arjuna, or cause to be slain? If just a man casts off worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off worn out bodies and enters others that are new. So if you guys are picking up, obviously they're also talking about reincarnation here, and it being the reality of nature. Weapons cut it not, fire burns it not, water wets it not, and wind dries it not. Commentary. The self is partless. It is infinite and extremely subtle. So the sword cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, and wind cannot dry it. This self cannot be cut, burnt, wetted, nor dried up. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, ancient, and immovable. This self is said to be unmanifested, unthinkable, and unchangeable. Therefore, knowing this to be such, you shouldest not grieve. But even if thou thinkest it as being constantly born and dying, even then, O mighty armed, thou shouldest not grieve. In commentary, birth is inevitable to what is dead, and death is inevitable to what is born. This is the law of nature, therefore one should not grieve. For certain is death for the born, and certain is birth for the dead. Therefore, over the inevitable thou shalt not grieve. Beings are unmanifested in their beginning, and manifested in their middle state, O Arjuna, and unmanifested again in their end. What is there to grieve about? So, as you can understand here, this is before you're born, this is as you're alive, and this is after you die. It's a commentary. The physical body is a combination of the five elements. It is perceived by the physical eye only after the five elements have entered into such combination. After death, the body disintegrates and all the five elements return to their source. The body cannot be perceived now. It can be perceived only in the middle state. He who understands the nature of the body and human relationships based upon it will not grieve. One sees this, the self, as a wonder. Another speaks of it as of it as wonder. Another hears of it as a wonder. Yet, having heard, none understands it at all. The verse may also be interpreted in this manner. He says, "He that sees, hears, and speaks of the self is a wonderful man. Such a man is rare, is very rare. He is one among many thousands. Therefore, the self is very hard to understand." And also, if you may, again, bringing this back to the Christian Bible, or to the New Testament, he that has eyes to see, right? He who has ears to hear. Here we are. We have it being played out here. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why I'm reading this, but part of it is for a lot of those out there that haven't read the Bhagavad Gita. There are some really interesting connections within the scriptures of the New Testament and this. So, continuing, this, the indweller in the body of everyone, is always indestructible, O Arjuna. Therefore, thou shouldn't not grieve for any creature. Further, having regard to thy own duty, thou shouldst not waver, for there is nothing higher for a kshatriya than a righteous war. Commentary. To a kshatriya, one born in the warrior or ruling class, nothing is more welcome than a righteous war. Happy are the kshatriyas, O Arjuna, who are called upon to fight in such a battle that comes of itself as an open door to heaven. The scriptures declare that if a warrior dies for a righteous cause on the battlefield, he at once ascends to heaven. But if thou wilt not fight in this righteous war, then having abandoned thine duty and fame, thou shalt incur sin. People too will recount thy everlasting dishonor, and to one who has been dishonored, dishonor is worse than death. The great Kar warriors will think that thou hast withdrawn from the battle through fear, and thou will be lightly held by them who have thought much of thee. Thy enemies also, cavilling at thy power, will speak many abusive words. What is more painful than this? Slain, thou wilt obtain heaven. Victorious, thou wilt enjoy the earth. Therefore stand up, O son of Kunti, resolve to fight. Having made pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat the same, engage thou in battle for the sake of battle. Thus thou shalt not incur sin. This is the yoga of equanimity, or the doctrine of poise and action. If a person performs actions with the above mental attitude, he will not reap the fruits of such actions. This which has been taught to thee is wisdom concerning Sankhya. Now listen to wisdom concerning yoga, endowed with which, O Arjuna, thou shalt cast off the bonds of action. In this there is no loss of effort, nor is there any harm, the production of contrary results or transgression. Even a little of this knowledge, even a little practice of this yoga protects one from great fear. In karma yoga, selfless action, even a little effort brings immediate purification of the heart. Purification of the heart leads to fearlessness. Here, O joy of the Kurus, here is the single one-pointed determination. Many branched and endless are the thoughts of the irresolute. Flowery speech is uttered by the unwise who take pleasure in the eulogizing words of the Vedas, O Arjuna, saying, quote, there is nothing else, unquote. Pardon me, I have to take another sip here. Unwise people who lack discrimination places great stress upon the karma kanda, or ritualistic portion of the Vedas, which lay down specific rules for specific actions for the attainment of specific fruit. They extol these actions and reward unduly. Now, isn't this very interesting? So this is I love this because this really applies to the priest class in every religion in the history of time. And they're talking specifically about the Vedas here. And isn't that interesting that in the book, the lost history of Jesus Christ or whatever, when he goes into India, Tibet, and all that kind of stuff, he kind of said something similar in that book. But it's very interesting how he makes this point here, because there is one should study scripture, but then there's the practice of it, which is what he's talking about here when it comes to karma yoga. So continuing. Full of desires, having heaven as their goal, they utter speech which promises birth as the reward of one's actions and prescribes various specific actions for the attainment of pleasure and power. For those who are much attached to pleasure and to power, whose mind are drawn away by such teaching, that determinate faculty is not manifest that is steadily bent on meditation and samadhi, the state of superconsciousness. The Vedas deal with the three attributes of nature. Be thou above these three attributes, O Arjuna. Free yourself from the pairs of opposites and ever remain in the quality of sattva, goodness, freed from the thought of acquisition and preservation, and be established in the self. Guna means attribute or quality. It is substance as well as quality. Nature is made up of three gunas: sattva, purity, light, harmony; rajas, passion, restlessness, motion; and tamas, inertia, darkness. The pair of opposites are pleasure and pain, heat and cold, gain and loss, victory, defeat, honor, dishonor, praise, and censure. And I would add good and evil to that. To the Brahmana who has known the self, where did that just go? Okay. To the Brahmana who has known the self, all the Vedas are of as much use as is a reservoir of water in a place where there is a flood. Only for a sage who has realized the self are the Vedas of no use, because he is in possession of knowledge of the self. This does not, however, mean that the Vedas are useless. They are useful for neophytes or aspirants who have just started on the spiritual path. You see, now this is a very astute and very, I mean, this is a great comment, okay? Written by, he is obviously a devotee or a swami, so he's deep into this religious culture. But it's a rare thing when you hear a man of religion, no matter what religion you come from, make a statement like this. Just saying. This is part of the reason why the Gita is really an outstanding piece of literature. Let's see here. Thy right is to work only, but never with its fruits. Let not the fruits of actions be thy motive, nor let the attachment to be to inaction. Actions done with expectation of its reward bring bondage. If you do not thirst for them, you get purification of heart and ultimately knowledge of the self. Now, a lot of people who don't have a lot of spiritual background may not understand really what this means, because the whole idea behind this is that you do things with the idea that there will be a result, but you don't attach any expectation of what that result will be. You have an idea, but if you just do things, and especially if you do things in a selfless way, what I mean by do things too is that you could be working on something, and and it may turn out the way that it turns out, or may not turn out the way that you wanted it to turn out. But having the attachment of you wanting it to turn out a certain way is what they're talking about here. There's a whole lot more to this idea, which I'm sure they'll get into as the Gita goes along, but that's something I'll definitely talk about in the future. Perform action, O Arjuna, being steadfast in yoga, abandoning attachment and balanced in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga. Far lower than the yoga of wisdom is action, O Arjuna. Seek thou refuge in wisdom. Wretched are they whose motive is the fruit. Actions done with evenness of mind is the yoga of wisdom. Actions performed by one who expects their fruits are far inferior to the yoga of wisdom, wherein the seeker does not seek the fruits. The former leads to bondage and is the cause of birth and death. Endowed with wisdom, evenness of mind, one casts off in this life both good and evil deeds. Therefore, devote thyself to yoga. Yoga is skill in action. Actions which are of a binding nature lose that nature when performed with equanimity of mind. The wise, possessed of knowledge, having abandoned the fruits of their actions and being freed from the fetters of birth, go to the place which is beyond all evil. Clinging to the fruits of actions is the cause of rebirth. Man has to take a body to enjoy them. If actions are done for the sake of God, without desire for the fruits, one is released from the bonds of birth and death and attains to immortal bliss. When thy intellect crosses beyond the mire of delusion, then thou shalt attain to indifference as to what has been heard and what has yet to be heard. The mire of delusion is identification of the self with the body and mind. When thy intellect, perplexed by what thou hast heard, shall stand immovable and steady in the self, then thou shalt attain self realization. And then Arjuna says, what, O Krishna, is the description of him who has steady wisdom and is merged in the superconscious state? How does one of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? The Blessed Lord says, when a man completely casts off, O Arjuna, all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self by the self, then is he said to be one of steady wisdom. All the pleasures of the world are worthless to an illumined sage who is ever content in the immortal self. He whose mind is not shaken by adversity, who does not hanker after pleasures, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady wisdom. He who is everywhere without attachment or meeting with any good or bad, who neither rejoices nor hates, his wisdom is fixed. When, like the tortoise which withdraws its limbs on all sides, he withdraws his senses from the sense objects, then his wisdom becomes steady. The objects of the scenes turn away from the abstinent man, leaving the longing behind, but his longing also turns away on seeing the Supreme. The turbulent senses, O Arjuna, do violently carry away the mind of a wise man, though he be striving to control them. Having restrained them all, he should sit steadfast, intent on me. His wisdom is steady, whose senses are under control. When a man thinks of the objects, attachment to them arises. From attachment, desire is born. From desire, anger arises. From anger comes delusion. From delusion, the loss of memory. From the loss of memory, the destruction of discrimination. From the destruction of discrimination, he perishes. But the self-controlled man, moving amongst objects with the senses under restraint and free from attraction and repulsion, attains to peace. In that peace, all pains are destroyed, for the intellect of the tranquil-minded soon becomes steady. When peace is attained, all miseries end. I will agree with this 100%. I'm not quite there myself, but man, I have gone just mountains. I've traveled mountains over my own self to basically put aside and forgive so much of things that have happened in my life. And I can tell you, between now and 20 years ago, I am such a different person, and peace is definitely a pervading part of it. There is no knowledge of the self to the unsteady, and to the unsteady, no meditation is possible. And to the unmeditative, there can be no peace. And to the man who has no peace, how can there be happiness? That's not something I say all the time. For the mind which follows in the wake of the wandering senses carries away his discrimination as the wind carries away a boat on the waters. What a great line. Therefore, O mighty Arjuna, O mighty armed Arjuna, his knowledge is steady, whose senses are completely restrained from sense objects. That which is night to all beings, then the self-controlled man is awake. When all beings are awake, that is night for the sage who sees. The sage lives in the self. This is day to him. He is unconscious of worldly phenomena. This is like night to him. The ordinary man is unconscious of his real nature, so life in the self is like night to him. He experiences sense objects. This is day to him. So this is kind of the explanation of, darkness and light. Let's see here. He attains peace, into whom all desires enters as waters enter the ocean, which, filled from all sides, remain unmoved, not the man who is in full of desires. The man attains peace who abandons all desires, moves about without longing, without a sense of mind, and without egoism. This is the Brahmic seat, eternal state, O son of Pritha. Attaining to this, none is deluded. Being established therein, even at the end of life, one attains to oneness with Brahman. And thus in the Upanishads, all right, that's the end of that section. Part 3, the Yoga of Action, summary of the third discourse. In order to remove moha or attachment, which was the sole cause of Arjuna's delusions, Sri Krishna taught him the imperishable nature of the Atman, the realization of which would grant him freedom of the eternal. A doubt therefore rises in Arjuna's mind as to the necessity of engaging in action even after one has attained this state. Sri Krishna clears his doubt by telling him that although one has realized oneness with the eternal, one has to perform action through the force of prakriti, or nature. He emphasizes that perfection is attained not by ceasing to engage in action, but by doing all actions as a divine offering, imbued with a spirit of non attachment and sacrifice. This right here is huge, and I'm going to do an entire video about this idea because I think there has been well, let's just say there'll be something coming up on this very soon. The man of God vision. The man of God vision, Sri Krishna explains to Arjuna, need not engage in action as he has attained everything that has to be attained. He has never, he can be ever absorbed in the calm and immutable self. But to perform action for the good of the world and for the education of the masses is no doubt superior. Therefore, action is necessary not only for one who has attained perfection, but also for one who is striving for perfection. Sri Krishna quotes the example of Janaka, the great sage king of India, who continued to rule his kingdom even after attaining God realization. Prakriti, or nature, is made up of the three qualities, rajas, tamas, and sattva, which we went over already. The Atman is beyond these three qualities and their functions. Only when knowledge of this fact dawns in man does he attain perfection. The Lord tells Arjuna that each one should do his duty according to his nature, and that doing duty that is suited to one's nature is the right spirit of detachment will lead to perfection. Arjuna raises the question as to why man commits such actions that cloud his mind and drag him downwards by force, as it were. Sri Krishna answers that it is desire that impels man to lose his discrimination in understanding, and thus commit wrong actions. Desire is the root cause of all evil action. If desire is removed, then the divine power manifests in its full glory, and one enjoys peace, bliss, light, and freedom. And Arjuna says, if it be thought that by thee that knowledge is superior to action, O Krishna, why then, O Kesava, dost thou ask me to engage in this terrible action? With these apparent perplexing words, thou confusest, as it were, by my understanding. Therefore tell me that one way for certain by which I may attain bliss. The blessed Lord said, in this world there is a twofold path. As I said before, one sinless one, the path of knowledge of the Sankhya's, and the path of actions of the Yogis. Not by the non-performance of actions does man reach actionless, nor by mere renunciation does he attain perfection. Even if a man abandons action, his mind may be active. One cannot reach perfection or freedom from action or knowledge of the self merely by renouncing action. He must possess knowledge of the self. Verily, none can ever remain for even a moment without performing action, for everyone is made to act helplessly indeed by the qualities born of nature. Commentary. The ignorant man is driven to action helplessly by the actions of the gunas, rajas, tamas, and sattvas, the three natures, the three parts of nature. Continuing, he who restraining the organs of action sits thinking of the sense objects in mind, he of deluded wandering is called a hypocrite. But whosoever controlling the senses by the mind, O Arjuna, engages himself in karma yoga, with the organs of action without attachment he excels. Do thou, performing thy bounden duty, for action is superior to inaction, and even the maintenance of the body would not be possible for thee by inaction. The world is bound by actions other than those performed by the sake of sacrifice. Do thou, therefore, O son of Kunti, perform action for that sake, for sacrifice alone, free from attachment. Commentary. If anyone does actions for the sake of the Lord, he is not bound. His heart is purified by performing actions for the sake of the Lord. Where this spirit of unselfishness does not govern the action, such actions bind one to worldliness, however good or glorious they may be. Continuing Krishna. Krishna says, the Creator, having in the beginning of creation created mankind together with sacrifice, said, by this shall ye propagate. Let this be the milch cow for your desires, the cow which yields the desired objects. With this do ye nourish the gods, and may the gods nourish you, thus nourishing one another. Ye shall attain the highest good. The gods, nourished by the sacrifice, will give you the desired objects. So he who enjoys the objects given by the gods without offering in return to them is verily a thief. The righteous who eat of the remnants of the sacrifice are freed from all sins, but those sinful ones who cook food only for their own sake, verily will eat sin. From food comes forth beings, and from rain food is produced. From sacrifice arises rain, and sacrifice is born of action. Know thou that action comes from Brahma, and Brahma proceeds from the imperishable. Therefore, the all pervading Brahma ever rests in sacrifice. He who does not follow the wheel thus gets set revolving. Who is of sinful life, rejoicing in senses, he lives in vain, O Arjuna. Commentary. He who does not follow the wheel by studying the Vedas and performing the sacrifices prescribed therein, but who indulges only in sensual pleasures lives in vain. He wastes his life. Quick sip of coffee. Krishna continues, but for that man who rejoices only in the self, who is satisfied in the self, who is content in the self alone, verily there is nothing to do. For him there is no interest whatsoever in what is done or what is not done, nor does he depend on being for any object. Commentary. The sage who rejoices in his own self does not gain anything but by doing any action. To him, no real purpose is served by engaging in any action. No evil can touch him as a result of inaction. He does not lose anything by being inactive. And Krishna continues, therefore, without attachment, do thou always perform action which should be done, for by performing action without attachment, man reaches the supreme. Janaka and others attain perfection verily by action only. Even with a view of the protection of the masses, thou shouldest perform action. Whatsoever a great man does, that the other men also do, whatever he sets up as the standard that the world follows. There is nothing in the three worlds, O Arjuna, that should be done by me, nor is there anything unattained that should be attained, yet I engage myself in action. For should I not ever engage myself in actions unwearied, men would in every way follow my path, O Arjuna. These worlds would perish if I did not perform actions. I should be the author of confusion of castes and destruction of these beings. As the ignorant men act from attachment to action, O Bharata, Arjuna, so should the wise act without attachment, wishing the welfare of the world. Let no wise man unsettle the minds of ignorant people who are attached to action. He should engage them in all actions, himself fulfilling them with devotion. This is a very important line, okay? Let no wise man unsettle the minds of ignorant people who are attached to action. He should engage with them in all actions, himself fulfilling them with devotion. So this, essentially what they're saying here is, he's saying that one can talk to other people about, say, higher spiritual ideas. And this is one of the big issues with the rise of quote-unquote what one would call New Age, movements or whatever else, which is such a strange term. But the thing is that you don't have to convince people, like, say, God exists, spirituality, things like that. And it's telling you, people who understand this won't even bother. But the thing is that the outward actions that they do within their lives is based on the quality of their spiritual connection with God, i.e., with everything else and everyone else. And so the actions in life are done, through life, where you can keep, as far as unsettling the mind of ignorant people, you can let them, be on their own path. So I just wanted to stop and make a comment about that. All actions are wrought, Krishna continues, all actions are wrought in all cases by the qualities of nature only. He whose mind is deluded by egoism thinks, quote, I am the doer, unquote. Commentary. Prakriti, or nature, is that state in which three gunas exist in a state of equilibrium. When this equilibrium is disturbed, creation begins and the body, senses, and mind are formed. The man who is deluded by egoism identifies the self with the body, mind, the life force and the senses, and ascribes to the self all the attributes of the body and the senses. In reality, the gunas of nature perform all actions. Krishna continues, But he who knows the truth, O mighty armed Arjuna, without the divisions of the qualities and their functions, knowing that the gunas as senses move amidst gunas as the sense objects, is not attached. Those deluded by the qualities of nature are attached to the functions of the qualities. A man of perfect knowledge should not unsettle the foolish one of imperfect knowledge. Renouncing all actions in me, with a mind centered in the self, free from hope and egoism and from mental fever, do thou fight. In commentary, surrender all actions to me with the thought, quote, I perform all actions for the sake of the Lord only, unquote. Krishna continues, those men who constantly practice this teaching of mine with faith and without cavilling are too freed from actions. But those who carp at my teachings and do not practice it, deluded in all knowledge and devoid of discrimination, know them to be doomed to destruction. Even a wise man acts in accordance with his own nature. Beings will follow nature. What can restraint do? Commentary, only the ignorant man comes under the sway of his natural propensities. The seeker of truth, who is endowed with the, quote, four means, unquote, and who constantly practices meditation, can easily control nature if he rises above the sway of the pairs of opposites, like love and hate, etc. Krishna continues, attachment and aversion for the objects of the senses abide in the senses. Let none come under their sway, for they are his foes. Better is one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than the duty of another, well discharged. Better is death in one's own duty, the duty of another is fraught with fear. Arjuna says, but impelled by what does man commit sin, though against his wishes, O Krishna, constrained as it were by force? And the blessed Lord said, it is desire, it is anger born of the quality of rajas, all sinful and all devouring. Know this as the foe here in this world. And rajas actually means sacrifice. I'm going to get into that soon in a different video. As fire is enveloped by smoke, as a mirror by dust, and as an embryo by the amnion, so is this enveloped by that. O Arjuna, wisdom is enveloped by this constant enemy of the wise in the form of desire, which is unappeasable fire. We have heard that expressed before, have we not? In many of the videos I've done, especially the audiobook, The Philosophy of Fire. The senses, mind, and intellect are said to be its seat, though these it deludes and embodies by veiling his wisdom. Therefore, O best of the Bharatas, Arjuna, controlling the senses first, do thou kill this sinful thing, desire, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. They say that the senses are superior to the body. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intellect, and one who is superior to even the intellect, he, the self. Thus, knowing him who is superior to the intellect and restraining the self by the self, slay thou, O mighty armed Arjuna, the enemy of the form of desire, hard to conquer. Commentary, restrain the lower self by the higher self, subdue the lower mind by the higher mind. It is difficult to conquer desire because it is of a highly complex and incomprehensible nature. But a man of discrimination and dispassion who does constant and intense sadhana can conquer it quite easily. That's the end of that part. Section 4, the Yoga of Wisdom. Summary of the fourth discourse. Lord Krishna declares that he is born from age to age in order to raise man and take him to the supreme. Whenever there's a prevalence of unrighteousness and the world is ruled by the forces of darkness, the Lord manifests himself to destroy these adverse forces and to establish peace, order, and harmony. Hence, we see the appearance of the great saviors of the world. What is the secret of yogic action? This the Lord proceeds to explain to Arjuna, even though one is not engaged in action, but if the mind is active with the idea of doership and egoism, then it is action in the inaction. On the other hand, though engaged physically in the intense action, if the idea of agency is absent, if one feels that Prakriti does everything, it is inaction in action. The liberated man is free from attachment and is always calm and serene, though engaged in ceaseless action. He is unaffected by the pairs of opposites like joy and grief, success and failure. One who has true union with the Lord is not subject to rebirth. He attains to immortality. Such a union can only be achieved when one is free from attachment, fear, and anger, being thoroughly purified by right knowledge. The Lord accepts the devotion of all, whatever path they may use to approach him. Various kinds of sacrifices are performed by those engaged in the path of God. Through the practice of these sacrifices, the mind is purified and led Godward. Here also there must be the spirit of a non-attachment to the fruits of action. Divine wisdom, according to Sri Krishna, should be sought at the feet of a liberated guru, one who has realized the truth. The aspirant should approach such a sage in a spirit of humility and devotion. God himself manifests in the heart of the guru and instructs the disciple. Having understood the truth from the guru by direct intuitive experience, the aspirant is no longer deluded by ignorance. The liberated aspirant directly holds the self in all beings and all beings in the self. He cognizes through the internal experience or intuition that all beings, from the Creator down to the blade of grass, exists in his own self and also in God. Arjuna is given the most heartening assurance that divine wisdom liberates even the most sinful. When knowledge of the self dawns, all action with their results are burnt by the fire of that knowledge, just as fuel is burnt by fire. When there is no idea of egoism, then there is no desire for the fruits of one's actions. Actions are no actions. They lose their potency. In order to attain divine wisdom, one must have supreme faith and devotion. Faith is therefore the most important qualification for a spiritual aspirant. The doubting mind is always led astray from the right path. Faith ultimately confers divine knowledge, which removes ignorance once and for all. Mere intellectual knowledge does not lead to liberation. It cannot grant one supreme peace and freedom. When one has achieved complete self-mastery and self-control, when one has intense faith and devotion, then true knowledge dawns on him within one and attains liberation and freedom from all weaknesses and sins. The Lord concludes by emphasizing that the soul that doubts goes to destruction. Without faith in oneself, in the scriptures and in the words of the preceptor, one cannot make any headway on the spiritual path, the preceptor being a guru. It is doubt that prevents one from engaging in spiritual sadhana and realizing the highest knowledge and bliss. By following the instructions of the guru and through its sincere service, one's doubts are rent asunder and divine knowledge manifests itself within. Spiritual progress then goes on at a rapid pace. Whew, he's not wrong about that. Let me take a quick drink here, guys. Okay, continuing. Krishna says, I taught this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. He told it to Manu. Manu proclaimed it to Ishvaku. This indeed this handed down thus in regular succession, the royal sages knew. This yoga, by a long lapse of time, has been lost here, O Paran Tapa, burner of foes. That's an interesting line. This is going to play into a big project I'm working on here. Commentary. The royal sages were kings who at the same time possessed divine knowledge. They learned this yoga. Now, I would like to say something. The royal sages who were kings at the same time possessed the divine knowledge, right? They learned this yoga. There are people who would and do consider certain yogic masters as godlike. And it makes you wonder with this thing here. As we know, the original pharaohs were monotheists, just like Krishna is explaining here. This is the ultimate ending is God, right? That's it, right? And this is a very fascinating part of the commentary here is that the royal sages were kings. So, and I'm going to be showing this in the future with some interesting evidence. But what if the Egyptians were actually following this old ancient yoga? And, you know, I'm going to show some evidence of that in a very future project, which I'm putting together now. It's taking me forever, but I'm putting it together finally. So hopefully, but just, I just wanted to point this out. They're saying here, even here, the kings at the time were possessed with this divine knowledge. There's not a mistake, in my opinion, with that connection with other ways that different ancient civilizations consider their kings to be quote unquote divine. I think there's part of that it was really just an egoistic thing, but then I think part of the ancient part of it may have actually been somewhat along these lines here. So continuing, Krishna says, that same ancient yoga has been today taught to thee by me, for thou art my devotee and friend. It is the supreme secret. Commentary. This ancient yoga consists of profound and subtle teachings. Hence, it is the supreme secret which the Lord reveals to Arjuna. And Arjuna says, later on was thy birth, and prior to it was the birth of Vivasvan, the sun. How am I to understand that thou didst teach this yoga in the beginning? Krishna says, many births of mine have passed, as well as thine, O Arjuna. I know them all, but thou knowest not, O Paranpatpa. Though I am unborn and of imperishable nature, and though I am the Lord of all beings, yet ruling over my own nature, I am born by my own Maya, which is illusion. Whenever there is a decline of righteousness, O Arjuna, whenever there is a decline of righteousness, O Arjuna, and rise of unrighteousness, then I manifest myself. Commentary. That which elevates a man helps him to reach the goal of life and attain knowledge is dharma, righteousness. That which drags him into worldliness and unrighteousness, that which helps a man to attain liberation is dharma. That which makes him irreligious is adharma, or unrighteousness. Krishna continues, for the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of the righteousness, I am born in every age. He who thus knows in true light my divine birth and action after having abandoned the body is not born again. He comes to me, O Arjuna, freed from attachment, fear, and anger, absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, purified in the fire of knowledge. Many have attained to my being. In whatever way men approach me, even so do I reward them. My path do men tread in all ways, Arjuna. Those who long for success and action in this world sacrifice to the gods, because success is quickly attained by men through action. The fourfold castes have been created by me according to the differentiation of guna and karma. Though I am the author thereof, know me as the non-doer and immutable. Commentary. The four castes are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudra. This division is according to the guna and karma. Guna is quality, karma is the kind of work. Both guna and karma determine the caste of a man. Now understand that this caste thing, it became a physical caste separation. But originally what this had to do was the kind of spirit and person that you exhibited in life. So if you started off as a farmer and then had a religious experience and then ended up becoming a swami or a guru or something like that, then you may have started as one caste but elevated yourself into a different. Unfortunately, over time that became horrifyingly corrupted and was used in terms of race. And as you can see here, that's not at all what it was meant to be. So continuing, Krishna says, in a Brahmana, sattva predominates. He possesses serenity, purity, self-restraint, straightforwardness, and devotion. In a Kshatriya, rajas predominate. He possesses prowess, splendor, firmness, dexterity, generosity, and rulership. In a Vaisya, rajas predominate, and tamas is subordinate to the rajas. He does the duty of plowing, protection of the cattle, and trade. In a Sudra, tamas predominates, and rajas is subordinate to the quality of the tamas. He renders service to the other three castes. Human temperaments and tendencies vary according to the gunas. And so the Sudras really are basically the ignorant masses. Actions do not taint me, nor have I desired for the fruits of actions. He who knows me thus is not bound by actions. Having known this, the ancient seekers after freedom also performed actions. Therefore, do thou perform actions as did the ancients in the days of yore. What is action? What is inaction? As to this, even the wise are confused. Therefore, I shall teach thee such action, the nature of action and inaction, by knowing which thou shalt be liberated from evil, of samsara, the world of rebirth and death, or the wheel. For verily the true nature of action enjoined by the scriptures should be known. Also that of forbidden or unlawful action and of inaction hard to understand is the nature path of action. He who hath seen inaction, and action in inaction, he is wise among men. He is a yogi and a performer of all actions. Uh, it's almost a tongue twister, almost. Commentary. This is the idea of agency, the idea of, quote, I am the doer, unquote, that binds man to worldliness. It is, if this idea vanishes, action is no action at all. It does not bind one to worldliness. This is inaction in action. But if a man sits quietly thinking of actions, that he is their doer, he is ever doing actions. This is referred to as action in inaction. Thank you for the commentary on that one, Mr. Sivananda. Krishna continues, he whose undertakings are all devoid of desires and selfish purposes, and whose actions have been burnt by the fire of knowledge, him the wise shall call a sage. Having abandoned attachment to the fruit of the action, ever content, depending on nothing, he does not do anything though engage in activity. Without hope and without the mind and the self-controlled, having abandoned all greed, doing mere bodily action, he incurs no sin. Content with what comes to him without effort, free from the pairs of opposites and envy, even-mindedness in success and failure, though acting he is not bound. To one who is devoid of attachment, who is liberated, whose mind is established in knowledge, who works for the sake of sacrifice, quote, for the sake of God, the whole action is dissolved. Brahman is the oblation. Brahman is the melted butter, ghee. By Brahman is the oblation poured onto the fire of Brahman. Brahman verily shall be reached by him who always sees Brahman in action. Commentary. This is wisdom sacrifice, wherein the idea of Brahman is substituted for the idea of the instruments and other accessories of action, the idea of action itself and its results. By having such an idea, the whole action melts away. So basically what he's saying here is that whatever you're doing, you are handling God in all aspects. And so if you're sitting here sawing a piece of wood, the wood is God, the saw is God, the dust coming off of it is God, all these things. And so the work is God, the pain, all these things are all part of it. And so when one comes to that idea where like you're literally living and thinking constantly with let's say that state of mind, this is essentially what he's talking about here. And that's why when you do think that way, like when a lot of jobs and things that you may have been more difficult to do or mentally difficult to do, physically difficult to do, you don't even care about anymore. And it can tell you, right, that that's something that actually happens. That certainly happened to me. Some yogis perform sacrifice to the gods alone, while others who have realized the self offer the self as sacrifice by the self in the fire of Brahman alone. Isn't that interesting? Yep. Some again offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice in the fire of restraint. Others offer sound and various objects to the senses as sacrifices in the fire of the senses. So that would be, sacrificing animals and ghee on the altar and that kind of stuff. That's what this last one means. Others again sacrifice all the functions of the senses and those of the breath, vital energy, or prana in the fire of the yoga of self-restraint kindled by knowledge. Some again offer wealth, austerity, and yoga as sacrifice, while the ascetics, or of self-restraint and rigid vows, offer study of scriptures and knowledge as sacrifice. Others offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming. In the incoming and the outgoing, restraining the courses of the outgoing and the incoming breath, solely absorbed in the restraint of the breath. Now, this is interesting, guys, because right here is where we have the 112 ways of self-realization through Shiva. That right there is the very first one, if I'm not mistaken. I'll be doing, I think, a video on those soon, but this is 100% in as part of one of their meditations. So commentary, some yogis practice inhalation, some practice exhalation, and some retention of breath. This is pranayama. Krishna continues, others who regulate their diet offer life breaths in life breaths. All these are knowers of sacrifice, whose sins are all destroyed by sacrifice. Those who eat the remnants of the sacrifice, which are like nectar, go to the eternal Brahman. This world is not for the man who does not perform sacrifice. How then can he have the other, O Arjuna? Commentary. They go to the eternal Brahman after attaining knowledge of the self through purification of the mind, performing the above sacrifices. He who does not perform any of these is not fit even for this miserable world. How then can he hope to get a better world than this? Krishna continues, thus various kinds of sacrifices are spread out before Brahman, literally at the mouth or face of Brahman. Know them all as born of action, and knowing thus thou shalt be liberated. Superior is wisdom sacrifice to sacrifice with objects, O Parantapa. All actions in their entirety, O Arjuna, culminate in knowledge. Know that by doing prostration, by question, and by service, the wise who have realized the truth will instruct thee in that knowledge. Knowing that, thou shalt not, O Arjuna, again become deluded like this, and by that thou shalt see all beings in thyself and also me. Even if thou art the most sinful of all sinners, yet thou shalt verily cross all sins by the raft of knowledge. Commentary, one can overcome sin through self-knowledge. Continuing, Krishna says, as the blazing fire reduces fuel to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge reduce all actions to ashes. Verily, there is no purifier in this world like knowledge. Who is perfected in yoga finds in it the self and time. The man who is full of faith, who is devoted to it, and who has subdued all the senses, obtains this knowledge, and having obtained the knowledge, he goes at once to the supreme peace. The ignorant, the faithless, the doubting self proceeds to destruction. There is neither this world nor the other, nor happiness or for the doubting. He who has renounced actions by yoga, whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge, and who is self-possessed, actions do not bind him, O Arjuna. Therefore, with the sword of knowledge of the self, cut asunder the doubt of the self-born of ignorance residing in thy heart, and take refuge in yoga. Rise, O Arjuna. This is very interesting too, right? The sword of knowledge of the self, cut asunder the doubt of the self-born of ignorance. And very interesting, Christ does say that he comes like a sword to separate. Chapter 5, the Yoga of Renunciation of Action. In spite of Sri Krishna's, this is the summary of the fifth discord. In spite of Sri Krishna's clear instructions, Arjuna still seemed to be bewildered. He wants to know conclusively which is superior, the path of action or the path of renunciation of action. The Lord says that both the paths lead to the highest goal of God realization. In both cases, the final realization of the Atman is the aim, but the path of Karma Yoga is superior. Actually, there is no real difference between the two. Krishna further asserts that perfection can be attained and one can be established in the Atman only after the mind has been purified through the performance of selfless action. The karma yogi who is aware of the Atman and who is constantly engaged in action knows that although the intellect, mind, and senses are active, he does not do anything. He is a spectator of everything. He dedicates all his actions to the Lord and thus abandons attachment, ever remaining pure and unaffected. He surrenders himself completely to the divine Shakti. Having completely rooted out all his desires, attachments, and the ego, he is not born again. The sage who has realized Brahman and is always absorbed in it does not have any rebirth. Such a sage sees Brahman within and without, within as the static and transcendent Brahman, and without as the entire universe. He sees the one self in all beings and creatures, in a cow and an elephant, and even in a dog and an outcast. He is ever free from joy and grief and enjoys eternal peace and happiness. He does not depend on the senses for his satisfaction. On the other hand, the enjoyments of the senses are generators of pain. They are impermanent. Sri Krishna reminds Arjuna that desire is the main cause of pain and suffering. It is the cause of anger. Therefore, the aspirant should try to eradicate desire and anger if he is to reach the supreme. The Lord concludes by describing how to control the senses, mind, and intellect by concentrating between the eyebrows and practicing pranayama. One who has achieved perfect control of the outgoing senses and is freed from desire, anger, and fear attains liberation and enjoys perfect peace. Arjuna says, renunciation of the actions, O Krishna, thou praisest, and again yoga. Tell me conclusively which is the better of the two. Krishna says, renunciation and the yoga of action both lead to the highest bliss, but of the two, the yoga of action is superior to the renunciation of action. He should be known as a perpetual sannyasin who neither hates nor desires, for free from the pairs of opposites, O mighty armed Arjuna, he is easily set free from bondage. Commentary. A man does not become a sannyasin by merely giving up actions due to laziness, ignorance, some family quarrel, calamity, or unemployment. A true sannyasin is one who has neither attachment nor aversion to anything. Physical renunciations of objects is no renunciation at all. What is wanted is the renunciation of egoism and desires. Krishna continues, children, not the weak, children, not the wise, speak of knowledge and the yoga of action or the performance of actions as though they are distinct and different. He who is truly established in one obtains the fruits of both. That place, which is reached by the Sankhyas or the Jnanis, is reached by the Karma yogis. He sees who sees knowledge. He sees who sees knowledge and the performance of action, karma yoga, as one. let me step that back. He sees who sees knowledge and the performance of action as one. But renunciation, a mighty armed Arjuna, is hard to attain without yoga. The yoga harmonized sage proceeds quickly to Brahman. He who is devoted to the path of action, whose mind is quite pure, who has encouraged the self, who has subdued his sense, and who has realized the self as the self in all beings, though acting he is not tainted. I do nothing at all, thus will the harmonized knower of truth think, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, going to sleep, breathing, speaking, letting go, seizing, opening, and closing his eyes, convinced that the senses move among the sense objects. And commentary, the liberated sage always remains as a witness of the activities of the senses as he identifies himself with the self, big capital S letter. Continuing, Krishna says, he who performs actions offering them to Brahman and abandoning attachment is not tainted by sin as a lotus leaf by water. Yogis, having abandoned attachment, perform actions only by the body, mind, intellect, and also by the senses for the purification of self. The united one, well poised or harmonized, having abandoned the fruit of action, attains to the eternal peace, the non-united only, the unsteady or the unbalanced. Impelled by desire and attached to the fruit, is bound. Mentally renouncing all actions and self-control, the embodied one rests happy in the nine-gated city, neither acting nor causing others, bodies and senses, to act. Neither agency nor actions does the Lord create for the world, nor union with the fruits of actions. It is nature that acts. The Lord accepts neither the demerit nor even the merit of any. Knowledge is enveloped by ignorance. Thereby beings are deluded. But to those whose ignorance is destroyed by knowledge of the self, like the sun, knowledge reveals the supreme, Brahman, God. Their intellect absorbs in that. Give me just a quick second, guys. I am going to just give this a pause. I'll be back in 1 second here. Okay. Paul told me yesterday. I told him I found the Doo-doo-doo. Sorry, guys. Um, my wife came home an hour earlier, so I wanted to make sure she knew I was recording and all that. Let me get back to this. Okay. Okay, so, ba, 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 ba. All right, I already said the part about the sun here, which is kind of an interesting line. So their intellect, let me just make sure that, yeah, we're good. Their intellect absorbed in that, their self being that, established in that, i.e., God, with that as their supreme goal, they go whence there is no return, their sins dispelled by knowledge. Sages look with an equal eye on the Brahmin endowed with learning and learning and humility on a cow, on an elephant, and even on a dog and an outcast. Even here in this world, birth, i.e., everything, is overcome by those whose minds rest in equality. Brahman is spotless indeed and equal, therefore they are established in Brahman. Resting in Brahman, with steady intellect, undiluted, the knower of Brahman neither rejoiceth on obtaining what is pleasant or grieveth on obtaining what is unpleasant. With the self unattached to the external contacts, he discovers happiness in the self. With the self engaged in meditation of Brahman, he attains to the endless happiness. The enjoyments that are born of contacts are generators of pain only, for they have a beginning and an end. O Arjuna, the wise do not rejoice in them. He who is able, while still here in this world, to withstand before the liberation from the body the impulse born of desire and anger, he is a yogi, he is a happy man. He who is ever happy within, who rejoices within, who is illuminated within, such a yogi attains absolute freedom or moksha, himself becoming Brahman. The sages obtained absolute freedom or moksha, they whose sins have been destroyed, whose dualities, perceptions, i.e., perceptions of dualities or experience of the pairs of opposites, are torn asunder, who are self controlled and intent on the welfare of all beings. Let me just make sure the audio is working good here. Yeah? Yeah, we got. Okay, good. Sorry. Absolute freedom or Brahmanic bliss exists on all sides for those self controlled ascetics who are free from desire and anger, who have controlled their thoughts, and who have realized the self, shutting down all external contacts and fixing the gaze between the eyebrows, equalizing the outgoing and the incoming breaths moving within the nostrils. With the senses, the mind, and the intellect always controlled, having liberation as his supreme goal, free from desire, free from anger, the sage is verily liberated forever. He who knows me as the enjoyer of sacrifices and austerities, the great Lord of all the worlds, and the friend of all beings, attains to peace. This is extremely similar to what Jesus says as well. Chapter 6, the Yoga of Meditation, summary of the sixth discourse. Sri Krishna emphasizes once again that the yogi or sannyasin is one who has renounced the fruits of action, not the actions themselves. The performance of actions without an eye on their fruits being about the purification of the mind, only a purified mind, a mind free from desires, can engage itself in constant meditation on the Atman. Desire gives rise to imagination or sankalpa, which drives the soul into the field of action. Therefore, none can realize permanent freedom and tranquility of mind without renouncing desires. The lower self must be controlled by the higher self. All the lower impulses of the body, mind, and senses must be controlled by the power of the higher self. Then the higher self becomes one's friend. He who has perfect control of the body, mind, and senses and is united with God sees God in all objects and being. He sees inwardly that there is no difference between gold and stone, between friends and enemies, between righteous and the unrighteous. He is perfectly harmonized. Sri Krishna proceeds to give various practical hints. Now, let me just say something about that. As somebody who has gone very far in my life as far as in meditation and trying to my own self understanding myself, this is very true. This is a true statement in a lot of ways. Is that I don't get mad at things that I used to get mad at. I don't get annoyed. I don't, I can have an argument with somebody, and especially if it's like, not my wife or something like that. But like even with my own family, I've gotten so much better at being able to, have them get completely upset over something we're talking about, and I'm just completely fine because I don't really care about the end of these things. It doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? Like we're just having a conversation. But it's funny how the further along a person goes that direction, the more they realize how everyone else is completely on the other side of things. But it makes things so much more clear, to tell you the honest truth. So, continuing. Sri Krishna proceeds to give various practical hints as to the practice of meditation. The aspirant should select a secluded spot where there is no likelihood of disturbance. He should arrange his meditation seat properly and sit in a comfortable posture with the head, neck, and spine erect, but not tensed. That's very important, by the way. He should fix his purified mind on the Atman by concentrating between the eyebrows or on the tip of the nose. The practice of brahmacharya is absolutely necessary if one is to succeed in meditation. The conservation and transformation of the vital fluids into spiritual energy gives immense power of concentration. Fearlessness, too, is an essential quality of the Godward path. It is faith in the sustaining protection and grace of God. The aspirant is advised to practice moderation in his daily habits, in eating, sleeping, recreation, etc. Extremes are to be avoided as they hinder the practice of meditation. Living a life of such moderation and gathering up all his forces, directing them towards meditation upon the Atman, the aspirant gradually transcends the senses and intellect and merges himself in the blissful Atman. He finds that the bliss of the Atman is incomparable, that there is no gain greater than the self. Having thus attained perfect union with the self, the yogi no more descends into ignorance or delusion. He does not relish any more the pleasures of the senses. Lord Krishna again emphasizes that the concentration of the mind on the Atman should be like a steady flame in a windless palace or a place. This ultimately leads to the vision of the Lord in all beings and creatures. Arjuna is doubtful whether it is all possible to engage the mind steadily on the higher self, as its very nature seems to be one of restlessness. Krishna assures him that the practice can succeed through vairagya, dispassion, and constant effort. That's the one I was talking about earlier, dispassion. Like you don't care one way or the other. And I think the politics in America today is a great example of the people not practicing dispassion. Arjuna wishes to know the fate of the aspirant who fails to realize the supreme in spite of his faith and sincerity. Krishna tells him that the accumulated power of his yogic practices will assure him a better birth in the future, with more favorable conditions for his sadhana. The aspirant will then be compelled to carry on his yogic practices with greater vigor and faith and will finally achieve God realization. Krishna concludes that the yogi, one who has attained union with the Supreme Lord, is superior to the ascetics, to the men of book knowledge and the men of action, as the latter have not transcended ignorance and merged in the self. Now, what a great distinction that is. So I'm going to take a quick sip before Krishna speaks. Krishna says, he who performs his bounden duty without depending on the fruits of his actions, he is a sannyasin and a yogi, not he who is without fire and without action. Do thou, O Arjuna, know yoga to be that which they call renunciation. No one verily becomes a yogi who has not renounced thoughts. Commentary. Lord Krishna eulogizes karma yoga here because it is a means or a stepping stone to the yoga of meditation. In order to encourage the practice of karma yoga, it is stated that here that it is a sannyasa. Oh, interesting. So continuing, Krishna says, for a sage who wishes to attain to yoga, action is said to be the means. For the same sage who has attained to yoga, inaction, quiescence, is said to be the means. When a man is not attached to the sense objects or to actions, having renounced all thoughts, he is said to have attained to yoga. Let a man lift himself by his own self alone. Let him not lower himself, or his self alone is the friend of oneself, and this self alone is the enemy of oneself. Yes, the self is the friend of the self for him who has conquered himself by the self, the big capital S self. But to the unconquered self, the self stands in the position of an enemy, like an external foe. So essentially, they're trying to express that yourself, with big capital S, is what you truly are. Your ego is everything else that they're talking about here. The supreme self of him who is self controlled and peaceful is balanced in cold and heat, pleasure and pain, and also in honor and dishonor. The yogi who is satisfied with the knowledge and wisdom of the self, who has conquered the senses, and in whom a cloud of earth, a piece of stone, and gold are the same, is said to be harmonized. That is, it is said to have attained the state of Nrivikalpa Samadhi. This is interesting too, guys, because what this is essentially the philosopher's stone, right? Transmutation of metals into gold. But the whole idea is that is the realization that none of these things are different from each other. Interesting. He who is of the same mind of the good-hearted friends, enemies, and the indifferent, the neutral, the hateful, the relatives, the righteous, the unrighteous, excels. Let the yogi try and try constantly to keep the mind steady, remaining in solitude alone with the mind and the body controlled and free from hope and greed. In a clean spot, having established a firm seat of his own, neither too high nor too low, made of a cloth, a skin, a kusha grass, one over the other. So essentially, they're saying that you need to lift your butt on a pillow or on one of these like yoga blocks or something like that. Okay, that's what he's basically trying to tell you here. There, having made the open-minded one point with the actions of the mind and the senses controlled, let him, seated on the seat, practice yoga for the purification of the self. And having made the mind one point, as in looking in between where your eyebrows are. Let him firmly hold his body, head, and neck erect and perfectly still, gazing at the tip of his nose without looking around. Not the tip. What he means by the tip is where it meets, not the very tip where your nostrils are, but where it comes out of your head. Serene minded, fearless, firm in the vow of a brahmachari, having controlled the mind, thinking of me, and balanced in mind, let him sit, having me as his supreme goal. So, anybody now who's listening to this, realize that Krishna in Christ, there's obviously a, Christ wasn't his name, but it was a title in a way. This is very similar in these books as well. So, those that Christians that don't have a whole lot of experience with meditation, like when Krishna says, thinking of me, just place me as the Christ, as Jesus, and use this as to your advantage, because this is a very simple way of teaching people how to meditate. But just wanted to throw that out there. Continuing, Krishna says, thus, always keeping the mind balanced, the yogi, with the mind controlled, attains to the peace abiding in me, which culminates in liberation. Verily, yoga is not possible for him who eats too much, nor for him who does not eat at all, nor for him who sleeps too much, nor for him who is always awake, O Arjuna. So essentially, you should have a balanced lifestyle as well. Yoga becomes the destroyer of pain for him who is always moderate in eating and recreation, such as walks, etc., who is moderate in exertion in actions, who is moderate in sleep and wakefulness. When the perfectly controlled mind rests in self only, free from longing for the objects of desire, then it is said he is united. Commentary: without union with the self, neither harmony nor balance nor samadhi is possible. I would agree with that. Ooh. Okay, this is interesting. As a lamp placed in a windless spot does not flicker, so such is compared the yogi of a controlled mind, practicing yoga in the self or absorbed in the yoga of the self. Commentary: this is a beautiful simile which yogis often quote when they talk of concentration or one-pointedness of mind. And this is very interesting. Similar, not quite the same, was the whole idea of one does not put a lamp underneath a bed or hide it, that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? This is guy. This I wonder if I'm gonna have to do a. I'm going to do a interesting. I'm already in the middle of it, but it's gonna take a while. A comparison between many of these different texts, but that's an interesting one. So Krishna continues, when the mind, restrained by the practice of yoga, attains to quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, he is satisfied with his own self, capital S. When he, the yogi, feels the infinite bliss which can be grasped by the pure intellect and which transcends the senses and established wherein he never moves from the reality, which having obtained, he thinks there is no other gain superior to it, wherein established he is not moved even by heavy sorrow. Let that be known by the name of yoga, the severance from union with pain. This yoga should be practiced with determination and with an undesponding mind, abandoning without reserve all the desires born of sankalpa and completely restraining the whole group of senses by the mind from all sides. Commentary: the mind is so diplomatic that it keeps certain desires for its secret gratification. So one should completely abandon all desires without reservations. Continuing, Krishna says, little by little let him attain to quietude by the intellect held firmly, having made it the mind established itself in the self, capital S. Let him not think of anything. And that's, I think, I just want to make a quick comment about that personally, is that if you're new to meditation, don't give up on it. You know, take at least 15 minutes of your day and try to let it, you know, try to keep it going, because the more you practice it, it's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the more you will develop it, the more useful and the benefits will come on their own. Again, don't concentrate on the benefits, but just concentrate on doing it, and as you do it, the benefits will manifest themselves, all by itself. So. So you're continuing, from whatever causes, Krishna says, from whatever cause the restless, unsteady mind wanders away, from that let him restrain it and bring it under the control of the self alone. Supreme bliss verily comes to this yogi whose mind is quite peaceful, whose passion is quieted, who has become Brahman, and who is free from sin. The yogi, always engaging the mind thus in the quote in the or parentheses in the practice of yoga, close parentheses, freed from sins, easily enjoys the infinite bliss of the contact with Brahman, the eternal, or God. With the mind harmonized by yoga, he sees the self abiding in all beings and all beings in the self. He sees the same everywhere. He who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, he does not become separated from me, nor do I become separated from him. And what is that line from the Bible? The birds, the stones, the trees all scream my name, something like to that effect. Commentary: the Lord describes here the effects of oneness. Continuing, Krishna says, he who being established in unity worships me who dwells in all beings, that yogi abides in me, whatever may be his mode of living. He who, through the likeness of the self, O Arjuna, sees equality everywhere, be it pleasure or pain, he is regarded as the highest yogi. Arjuna says, this yoga of equanimity taught by thee, O Krishna, I do not see its steady continuance because of the restlessness of the mind. The mind verily is restless, turbulent, strong, and unyielding, O Krishna. I deem it as difficult to control as to control the wind. Commentary: the mind ever changes its point of concentration from one object to another, so it is always restless. It is not only restless, but also turbulent and impetuous, strong and obstinate. Produces agitation in the body and in the senses. That is why the mind is even more difficult to control than to control the wind. Krishna says, undoubtedly, O mighty armed Arjuna, the mind is difficult to control and restless, but by practice and dispassion it may be restrained. I think that yoga is hard to be attained by one of uncontrolled self, but the self-controlled and striving one attains to it by the proper means. And Arjuna says, excuse me, he who is unable to control himself, though he has the faith, and whose mind wanders away from yoga, what end does he meet, having failed to attain perfection in yoga, O Krishna? Fallen from both, does he not perish like a rent cloud, supportless, O mighty armed Krishna, deluded to the path of Brahman? I'm sorry, this is Arjuna talking. This doubt of mine, O Krishna, do thou completely dispel, because it is not possible for any but thee to dispel this doubt. Commentary: there is no better teacher than the Lord himself, as he is omniscient. Continuing, Krishna says, O Arjuna, neither in this world nor the next world is there a destruction for him, none, verily, who does good, O my son, ever comes to grief. Having attained to the worlds of the righteous and having dwelt there for everlasting years, he who fell from yoga is reborn in the house of the pure and the wealthy. Or is he born in a family of even the wise yogis? Verily, a birth like this is very difficult to obtain in this world. There he comes in touch with the knowledge acquired in his former body and strives more than before for perfection, O Arjuna. By that very former practice he is borne on in spite of himself. Even he who merely wishes to know yoga transcends the Brahmic word. Commentary. One who has fallen from yoga is carried to the goal, parentheses, which he is intended to reach in his previous birth, close parentheses, by the force of the impressions of his past yogic practices, though he may be unconscious of it and may not be willing to adopt the course of yogic discipline due to the force of some evil karma. Continuing, Krishna says, but the yogi who strives with assiduity, purified of sins, and perfected gradually through many births, reaches the highest goal. The yogi is thought to be superior to the ascetics and even superior to men of knowledge, obtained through the study of scriptures. He is also superior to men of action, therefore be thou a yogi, O Arjuna. And isn't this interesting? The yogi is thought to be superior to ascetics and even superior to men of knowledge who obtain through the study of scriptures. This kind of describes Jesus in a nutshell. just gonna throw it out there. I mean, did he not, he definitely butted up against the priest class and these various people, and, what can you say? The end of this chapter is, and among all the yogis, he who, full of faith and with his inner self merged in me, worships me, he is deemed by me to be the most devout. Chapter 7, the Yoga of Wisdom and Realization. Summary of the seventh discourse. Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that the Supreme Godhead has to be realized in both its transcendent and immanent aspects. The yogi who has reached the summit has nothing more to know. This complete union with the Lord is difficult of attainment. Among many thousands of human beings, very few aspire for this union, and even among those who aspire for it, very few ever reach the pinnacle of spiritual realization. The Lord has already given a clear description of the all-pervading, static, and infinite state of His. Now he proceeds to explain his manifestations as the universe and the power behind it. He speaks of these manifestations as his lower and higher prakritis. The lower prakriti is made up of the five elements: mind, ego, and intellect. The higher prakriti is the self element, which upholds the universe, activates it, and causes its appearance in final dissolution. Krishna says that whatever exists is nothing but himself. He is the cause of the appearance of the universe and all things in it. Everything is strung on him like clusters of gems on a string. He is the essence, substance, and substratum of everything, whether visible or invisible. Although everything is in him, yet he transcends everything as the actionless self. Prakriti, or nature, is made up of the three gunas, qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas. These three qualities delude the soul and make it forget its true nature, which is one with God. This delusion, termed maya, can only be removed by the grace of the Lord himself. Thus far, Arjuna has been taught the highest form of devotion, which leads to union with God, and his static aspect also with his dynamic prakriti. Krishna tells him that there are also other forms of devotion which are inferior, as they are performed with various motives. The distressed, the seeker of divine wisdom, and he who desires wealth worship, as also the wise of these, the Lords deem the wise as dearest to him. Such a devotee loves the Lord for the sake of pure love alone. Whatever form the devotee worships, the ultimate goal is the Lord himself. The Lord accepts such worship, knowing that it is directed to him only. Take a quick sip before we start this part. Krishna says, O Arjuna, hear how you shall without doubt know me fully with the mind intent on me, practicing yoga and taking refuge in me. And again, every time he says me, you can replace that with Christ, if you're a Christian listening to this. Commentary, if you sing the glories and attributes of the Lord, you will develop love for him, and then your mind will ever be fixed on him. Intense love for the Lord is real devotion. With this, you must surely get full knowledge of the self. Continuing, Krishna says, I shall declare to thee in full this knowledge and let me just, before I continue with the section, this is an interesting commentary by Sri Swami Sivananda, because essentially, you have true devotees in every single religion who get it on a very spiritual level. And it shows in their lives. And I think we all know people who are like that. And then you have a whole lot of other people who are more like the scribes and the people who have their head and their minds in the books and the text a little too much, and they got no actual practice in going under their belt. I just thought that was an interesting comment by him. Just the fact that we do see people like this in all kinds of different religions. I've met quite a few people myself, wonderful people. Continuing, Krishna says, I shall declare to thee in full this knowledge combined with direct realization after knowing with which nothing more here remains to be known. Among thousands of men, one perchance strives for perfection. Even among those successful strivers, only one perchance knows me in essence. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect, and egoism. Thus is my nature divided eightfold. Okay, interesting. So when you guys hear about the eightfold path, you understand that this is what it means. This is the inferior Prakriti, O mighty armed Arjuna. Know thou as different from it my higher Prakriti, nature. Again, Prakriti means nature. My higher nature, the very life element by which this world is upheld. Know that these two, my higher and lower natures, are the womb of all beings. So I am the source and dissolution of the whole universe. There is nothing whatsoever higher than me, O Arjuna. All this is strung on me as a cluster of gems on a string. Commentary. There is no other cause of the universe but me. I alone am the cause of the universe. Continuing, Krishna says, I am the sapidity in the water, O Arjuna. I am the light in the moon and the sun. I am the syllable in Om. I am in all the Vedas, sound in ether and virility in men. I am the sweet fragrance in earth, the brilliance in the fire, the life in all beings, and I am austerity in aesthetics. Know me, O Arjuna, as the eternal seed of all beings. I am the intelligence of the intelligent, the splendor and the splendid objects am I. And also I want to point out, too, is that earlier, there's a lot of different words for names for Krishna in this book, but it strikes me interesting that a lot of these ideas have direct correlations with Shiva as well. So continuing. Of the strong, I am the strength devoid of desire and attachment, and in all beings, I am the desired unopposed to Dharma, O Arjuna. Whatever beings and objects that are pure, active, and inert, know that they proceed from me. They are in me, yet I am not in them. Deluded by these natures, states, or things composed of the three qualities of nature, all this world does not know me as distinct from them and immutable. Verily, this divine illusion of mine, made up of the qualities of nature, is difficult to cross over. Those who take refuge in me alone cross over this illusion. The evildoers and the deluded, who are the lowest of men, do not seek me. They whose knowledge is destroyed by illusion follow the ways of demons. Four kinds of virtuous men worship me, O Arjuna. They are the distressed, the seeker of knowledge, the seeker of wealth, and the wise, O Lord of Bharatas. Of them, the wise, ever steadfast and devoted to the one, excels, is the best, close parentheses, for I am exceedingly dear to the wise, and he is dear to me. Noble indeed are all these, but I deem the wise man as my very self, capital S, for, steadfast in mind, he is established in me alone as the supreme goal. At the end of many births, the wise man comes to me, realizing that all this Vasudeva, the innermost self, such a great soul, Mahatma, is very hard to find. Those whose wisdom has been rent away by this or that desire go to other gods, following this or that rite, led by their own nature. And this is kind of the whole idea behind creating idols, because idols don't necessarily mean wooden things. You can make anything out of an idol. Your favorite car, your house, all these things that you tend to deliver much more of your life energy to than you should probably ever bother giving. So continuing, whatsoever form any devotees desire to worship with faith, that same faith of his I make firm and unflinching. Endowed with that faith, he engages in the worship of that form, and from it he obtains his desires, these being verily obtained by me alone. All right, yeah, so essentially, he's just saying here, whatsoever form any devotee desires to worship with faith, that same faith of his I make firm and unflinching. Endowed with that faith, he engages in the worth of that form, and from it he obtains his desires, this being verily obtained by me alone. So, you can say that this could be the various names of God, and he's just explaining that no matter how people endow their faith towards the divine, it's always technically towards the same divine being, no matter the name or the shape of that form, quote unquote. So, continuing, verily the reward, fruit, that accrues to those men of small intelligence is finite. The worshippers of the gods go to them, but my devotees come to me. Ah, interesting. The foolish think of me, the unmanifest, as having manifestation, knowing not my higher, immutable, and most excellent nature. I am not manifest to all as I am, being veiled by the Yoga Maya. This deluded world does not know me, the unborn and imperishable. I know, O Arjuna, the beings of the past, the present, and the future, but no one knows me. By the delusion of the pairs of opposites arising from desire and aversion, O Bharata, all beings are subject to delusions at birth, O Paranpata, Tapa. But those men of virtuous deeds whose sin have come to an end and who are freed from the delusion of the pairs of opposites worship me, steadfast in their vows. Those who strive for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me, realize in full that Brahman, the whole knowledge of the self in all action. Those who know me and the Abhibhuta, parentheses pertaining to the elements, close parentheses, the Adidaiva, parentheses pertaining to the gods, close parentheses, and the Adiyajna, pertaining to the sacrifice. Know me even at the same time of death, steadfast in mind. And here's some commentary. They who are steadfast in mind, who have taken refuge in me, who know me as knowledge of elements on the physical plane and knowledge of gods on the celestial or mental plane, as knowledge of sacrifice in the realm of sacrifice, they are not affected by death. So, section 8, Yoga of the Imperishable Brahman. This is the summary of the 8th discourse. Lord Krishna explains how those who attain him do not have to come again into this impermanent world of sorrow and pain. All beings, including even the gods, come again and again into the creative universe from the state of unmanifested being, wherein they remain at the end of an age cycle. But the Lord exists even beyond the unmanifested being. That radiant, imperishable divine reality is the highest goal to be attained. Single-minded devotion of our heart is the means of attaining this highest blessed state. Even though there are auspicious and inauspicious circumstances of departing from the physical body and journeying forth, yet if one steadily abides in the Lord through firm devotion and faith, then these conditions do not matter. By always remaining in tune with the Lord through pure love, and everything is made auspicious. If one can ever remain united with the divine through deep devotion and constant remembrance, regular meditation and continuous communion, then all times, places, conditions, and situations become auspicious and blessed. This is the secret of invoking his grace and attaining him and becoming eternally free and blissful. Arjuna here asks Lord Krishna about the meaning of the different terms referred to him in the last 2 verses of the previous chapter. He wishes to know what is the Supreme Being, what is karma or action that he refers to, and what is the meaning that pertains to this spirit, the elements, and the center of all things within the human body. Beyond all things, manifest and unmanifest, beyond these names and forms, there is the Supreme Being, Brahman. He indwells his body as the center of all things, including even your own self, individual soul. We are a spiritual being residing in a body and supported by the silent witness within, the supreme Antaryaman. Prakriti or nature is the being pertaining to the elements. Worship, prayer, and offering to the gods with faith and devotion constitute action that leads to blessedness. The secret of reaching the divine being and thus freeing oneself forever from birth and death and the pains and sufferings of this earth life is to constantly practice unbroken remembrance of the Lord at all times, in all places, and even amidst one's daily activity. If one practices such steady remembrances through regular daily sadhana, then he will be rooted in his remembrance even at the time of departing from his body at death. Thus departing, he will go beyond darkness and bondage and attain the realm of eternal blessedness. One must practice this sense control. The senses must be well disciplined and gradually withdrawn from outside objects. The mind should be centered within upon God, uttering Om, or Aum, or any divine name. By such steady practice daily, the Lord is easily attained. Excuse me while I drink before I start. Arjuna said, What is Brahman? What is the Adhyatma? What is action, O best among men? What is declared to be Abhibhuta? And what is Adidaiva said to be? Who and how is Adiyajna here in the body, O destroyer of Madhu, Krishna? And how at the time of death art thou to be known by the self-controlled one? Commentary. In the last two verses of the seventh discord, Lord Krishna uses certain philosophical terms. Arjuna does not understand their meaning, so he proceeds to the question to the Lord. Krishna says, Brahman is the imperishable, the supreme. He is essential nature. He is called self-knowledge, the offering to the gods, which causes existence and manifestations of beings, and which also sustains them, is called action. Abhibhuta, which is knowledge of the elements, pertains to my perishable nature, and the Purusha, or soul, is the Adidaiva. I alone am the Adiyajna here in the body, O best among embodied men. And whosoever leaving the body goes forth remembering me alone at the time of death, he attains my being. There is no doubt about this. Whosoever at the end leaves the body thinking of any being, so that being only does he go. Okay, let me go back. Whosoever at the end leaves the body thinking of any being, to that being only does he go, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, because of his constant thought of that being. In commentary, the most prominent thought of one's life occupies the mind at the time of death. It determines the nature of the body to be attained in the next birth. And that's very interesting, because that, I think, is also covered in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Continuing, Krishna says, Therefore at all times remember me only and fight. With mind and intellect fixed or absorbed in me, thou shalt doubtless come to me alone. With the mind not moving towards any other thing, made steadfast by the method of habitual meditation and constantly meditating, one goes on to the supreme person, the resplendent, O Arjuna. Whosoever meditates on the omniscient, the ancient, the ruler of the whole world, minuter than an atom, the supporter of all, the inconceivable form, effulgent like the sun and beyond the darkness of ignorance. At the time of death, with unshaken mind, endowed with devotion and by the power of yoga, fixing the whole life breath in the middle of the two eyebrows, he reaches that resplendent supreme person. That which is declared imperishable by those who know the Vedas, that which the self-controlled ascetics and passion-free enter, and desiring which celibacy is practiced, that goal I will declare to thee in brief. Having closed all the gates, confine the mind and the heart, and fix the life breath in the head. Engage in the practice of concentration. Uttering the monosyllable Om, the Brahman, remembering me always, and again, the way they're spelling here is O-M, but it's technically A-U-M. And then, of course, in America, they changed amen, or, amen into amen. But I think it's really supposed to be said amen, like that. You see how there's a connecting point here? It's interesting that they definitely changed to om within the Buddhist sphere of things. But I kind of like the A-U-M part better. It's a better sound. Anyways, uttering the monosyllable Om, the Brahman, remembering me always, he who departs thus leaving the body attains to the supreme goal. I am easily attained by the ever steadfast yogi who constantly and daily remembers me for a long time, not thinking of anything else with a single or pointed mind. O Partha, Arjuna. Commentary. Constantly remembering the Lord throughout one's life is the easiest way of attaining him. I would agree with this, and I will have more to say on that in a different video. Continuing, Krishna says, having attained me, these great souls do not take birth here, which is the place of pain and is non-eternal. They have reached the highest perfection, liberation. All the worlds, including the world of Brahma, are subject to return again, O Arjuna, but he who reaches me, O son of Kunti, has no rebirth. Those who know the day of Brahma, which is of a duration of 1,000 yugas, ages, and the night, which is also 1,000 yugas, durations, they know day and night. From the unmanifested, all the manifested worlds proceed at the coming of the quote-unquote day. At the coming of the quote-unquote night, they dissolve verily into that alone, which is called the unmanifested. Commentary. Coming of the day is the commencement of creation. Coming of the night is the commencement of dissolution. Continuing, Krishna says, this same multitude of beings, born again and again, is dissolved helplessly, O Arjuna, into the unmanifested at the oncoming of the night, and comes forth at the coming of the day. But verily there exists higher than the unmanifested another unmanifested eternal who is not destroyed when all beings are destroyed. In commentary, another unmanifested eternal refers to Para-Brahman, which is distinct from the unmanifested primordial nature, which is of quite a different nature. It is superior to Haranyagarbha, quote, the creative intelligence, unquote, and the unmanifested nature becomes it. It is their cause. Oh, I'm sorry, and the unmanifested nature because it is their cause. It is not destroyed when all beings from Brahma down to a blade of grass are destroyed. So essentially, it's above all those things, right? So continuing, Krishna says, what is called the unmanifested and the imperishable, that they say is the highest goal, path, they who reach it do not return to the cycle of births and deaths. This is my highest abode, place, or state. The highest Purusha, O Arjuna, is attainable by unswerving devotion to him alone, within whom all beings dwell and by whom all this is pervaded. Now I will tell thee, O chief of the Bharatas, the time departing at which the yogis will return or not return. Fire, light, daytime, the bright fortnight, the 6 months of the northern path of the sun, northern solstice, departing then by these, men who know Brahman go to Brahman. Attaining to the lunar light by smoke, nighttime, the dark fortnight, or the 6 months of the southern path of the sun, the southern solstice, the yogi returns. The bright and the dark paths of the world are verily thought to be eternal. By the one, the brightest path, a person goes not to return again, and by the other, the dark path, he does return. Commentary, the bright path is the path to the gods taken by devotees. The dark path is the dark path is of the mains taken by those who perform sacrifices or charitable acts with the expectation of rewards. Continuing, Krishna continues, knowing these paths, O Arjuna, no yogi is deluded. Therefore, at all times, be steadfast in yoga. Whatever fruits or merits is declared in the scriptures to accrue from the study of the Vedas, the performances of sacrifice, the practice of austerities, and the offering of gifts, beyond all these go the yogi. Having known this, he attains to the spiritual primeval, first ancient abode. So essentially, all of these can be a very big part of somebody's spiritual development. But once you hit a certain level of that, they're all just kind of the same. Continuing, chapter 9, the yoga of kingly science and the kingly secret. Interesting. Summary of the ninth discourse. Observing that Arjuna was a qualified aspirant and endowed with faith, Krishna declares him to the sovereign knowledge and sovereign secret that is to be known by direct experience. He adds that without faith in this knowledge, man fails to reach God and is reborn to suffer. Now, the Lord proceeds to describe his nature as the eternal, all-comprehensive truth. He is everything that is invisible and visible. He pervades everything that exists. He creates everything, sustains everything, and when final dissolution takes place, absorbs everything into himself. And by the way, this is the exact, right here, this is the exact same description of Kronos, or, eating his own children. Just saying, this is exactly what this means. That doesn't actually mean he ate his own children. It means this is the same thing. And this is also the same way that is described of Shiva as well. Continuing, he manifests them again when the next creation begins. All beings who are ignorant of this knowledge are caught helplessly in the cycle of birth and death. In the midst of this creation, preservation and dissolution of the universe, Lord stands as silent witness, unaffected and unattached. He is the sole director, sustainer, and supervisor of his cosmic prakriti. Now, this is a very important section here, okay? So, essentially, they're saying God is a silent witness, unaffected, unattached, is the sole director, sustainer, and supervisor of his own cosmic nature, which is not necessarily our physical nature. And that is something that is a difficult thing to wrap one's head around, but is extremely important point that I wanted to make. So, continuing, ignorant beings are not able to recognize the Lord in one who has realized him. Although these cruel beings assume a human form, their nature is that of demons. The God-realized Mahatma, on the other hand, is a man of knowledge and perceives him indwelling on all beings and creatures. He beholds the underlying unity of existence in all names and forms. The Lord's divine protection is assured to all those who take refuge in him. Whatever a path a devotee follows, he ultimately reaches him. He is the goal of the various methods of spiritual practice. Devotion, Sri Krishna emphasizes, is the essence of all spiritual discipline. If this supreme element is present, then the devotee is freed from bondage. The Lord observes the motive and degree of devotion. Even the most sinful and diabolical man, if he takes a radical turn towards the path of righteousness and truth, reaches the Lord. Whatever vocation one follows, one can attain the Lord if one seeks earnestly without loving devotion. The essential thing is to fix the mind on the Lord and dedicate everything unto him. One's body, mind, actions, emotion, and will. And isn't that interesting right here? So, dedicate everything to him, one's body, mind, actions, and will. And I do believe this is part of the question that the disciples asked, or somebody asked Jesus, is what are the most important commandments to follow? And if those of you know the answer to that, I mean, this is extremely similar. Love God with your body, mind, actions, and soul, and all your will, and love your neighbor as yourself. So here we have another expression of that. And we'll see that in the text as we continue. So Krishna says, I shall now declare to those who do not cavil the greatest secret, the knowledge combined with experience. Exactly. Self-realization. Having known this, thou shalt be free from evil. This is the kingly science, the kingly secret, the supreme purifier, realizable by direct intuitional knowledge according to righteousness, very easy to perform and imperishable. To those who have no faith in this dharma, knowledge of the self, or parantapa, Arjuna, return to the path of this world of death without attaining me. All this world is pervaded by me in my unmanifest aspect. All beings exist in me, but I do not dwell in them. Nor do beings exist in me, in relativity. Behold my divine yoga, supporting all beings but not dwelling in them, is myself, the efficient cause of beings. Excuse me. As the mighty wind, moving everywhere, rests always in the ether, even so know thou that all beings rest in me. All beings, O Arjuna, enter into my nature at the end of kalpa. I send them forth again to the beginnings of the next kalpa. Animating my nature, I again and again send forth all this multitude of beings, helpless by the force of nature. These actions do not bind me, O Arjuna, sitting like one indifferent, unattached to those acts. Under me, as supervisor, nature produces the moving and the unmoving. Because of this, O Arjuna, the world revolves. Now, this is fascinating, and this is another interesting allegory to Shiva yet again. Under me, as supervisor, nature produces the moving and unmoving. Because of this, Arjuna, the world revolves. If you look at a Shiva linga, that's it's like the physical representation of what that means. You have the linga, which rises above, where the yoni, which is wrapping around it in a almost energetic form and creation. And so I just wanted to point that out, because that is going to be something that's going to play into a lot more of the future videos and research I'm going to be bringing to you guys. Continuing, Krishna says, fools disregard me, clad in human form, not knowing my higher being as the great Lord of all beings. Commentary, fools who do not have discrimination despise me, dwelling in human form. I have taken this body in order to bless my devotees. These fools have no knowledge of my higher being. I am the great Lord, the Supreme. Of vain hopes, of vain actions, vain hopes, of vain actions, of vain knowledge and senselessness, they verily are possessed of the deceitful nature of demons and undivine beings. But the great souls, O Arjuna, partaking of my divine nature, worship me with a single mind and with the mind devoted to nothing else, knowing me as the imperishable source of beings. Always glorifying me, striving firm in vows, prostrating before me, they worship me with devotion ever steadfast. Others also, sacrificing with the wisdom sacrifice, worship me, the all-faced, as one, as distinct, and as manifold. I am Kratu, I am Yajna, I am the offering, food to the mains. And mains means your descendants. Or not your descendants, your ancestors. I am the medicinal herb and all the plants. I am the mantra. I am also the ghee or melted butter. I am the fire. I am the oblation. I am the father of this world, the mother, the dispenser of the fruits of actions, and the grandfather, the one thing to be known, the purifier, the sacred monosyllable Aum, and also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. I am the goal, the support, the lord of the witness, the abode, the shelter, the friend, the origin, the disillusion, the foundation, the treasure house, and the imperishable seed. I am the sun. I give heat, I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and also death, existence and non-existence, O Arjuna. Which, by the way, is also represented in Shiva, exactly how it's represented in Shiva's in Shaivism. That's 100%. You know, that's the exact same explanation. Continuing, the knowers of the three Vedas, the drinkers of Soma, which is a psychedelic type of, not psychedelic, but it's a type of drink that, let's just say, causes physical reactions, what people take, the intoxicants that people take in various religious things across the world. This is part of the big Vedic one, is the Soma. Purified of all sins, worshipping me by sacrifices, pray for the way to heaven. They reach the holy word of Lord of the gods and enjoy in heaven the divine pleasures of the gods. They, having enjoyed the vast heaven, enter the world of mortals when their merits are exhausted. Thus, abiding by the injunctions of the three Vedas and desiring objects of desires, they attain to the state of going and returning. Commentary: when their accumulated merits are exhausted, they come to this world again. They have no independence. Continuing, Krishna says, to those men who worship me alone, thinking of no other, of those ever united, I secure what is not already possessed and preserve what they already possess. Even those devotees who, endowed with faith, worship other gods, worship me only, O Arjuna, but by the wrong method. And here they're saying, yet again, this idea that worshiping other gods by different names, it doesn't really matter. They're still worshiping the same God. So, for I alone am the enjoyer and also the Lord of all sacrifices, but they do not know me in essence, in reality, and hence they fall, return to the mortal world. The worshippers of the gods go to them, to the mains go to the ancestor worshippers, to the deities who preside over the elements go their worshippers. My devotees come to me. Whoever offers me with devotion in a pure mind, heart, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or a little water, I accept this offering. Whatever thou doest, whatever thou eatest, whatever thou offerest in sacrifice, whatever thou givest, whatever thou practiseth as austerity, O Arjuna, do it as an offering to me, unto me. Thus shalt thou be freed from the bonds of actions, yielding good and evil fruits, with the mind steadfast in yoga of renunciation, and liberated thou shalt come unto me. The same am I to all beings. To me there is none hateful or dear, but those who worship me with devotion are in me, and I am also in them. Even if the most sinful worship me with devotion to none else, he too should indeed be regarded as righteous, for he has rightly resolved. Soon he becomes righteous and attains to eternal peace, O Arjuna. Now know thou for certain that my devotee is never destroyed. For taking refuge in me, they also, who Arjuna may be sinful, birth, women, Vyasas, or as well as Sudras, attain supreme goal. How much more easily than the whole holy Brahmins and devoted royal saints attain the goal. Having obtained this impermanent and unhappy world, do thou worship me. Fix thy mind on me. Be devoted to me, sacrifice unto me, bow down to me, having thus united my whole self with me, taking me as the supreme goal, thou shalt verily come to me. Commentary: the whole being of a man should be surrendered to the Lord without reservation. There will be a marvelous transformation. He will have the vision of God everywhere. All sorrows and pains will vanish. His mind will be one with him. He will be forever have his life and being in the Lord alone. All right, so 10, the Yoga of Divine Glories. I need to just mute myself for one quick second. I'll be back in like 10 seconds. Sorry. Krishna tells Arjuna that even the devas and highly evolved souls fail to understand how he projects himself as the universe in all its manifestations. He goes on to describe the various qualities and that beings manifest according to their karmas. All these qualities, wisdom, truth, contentment, etc., originate from him. The true devotees of the Lord are wholly absorbed in Him. They are completely surrendered to Him, and through single-minded devotion they are granted the power of discrimination, the discrimination that leads them from the unreal to the real. Krishna emphatically declares that ignorance is destroyed and knowledge gained through divine grace alone. Arjuna accepts the descent of the Supreme in a human form, but wishes to know from the Lord himself his cosmic powers, by means of which he controls the diverse forces of the universe. The Lord describes his divine glories, bringing within the range of Arjuna's comprehension his limitless manifestations and how he upholds everything. In short, the Lord is the almighty power that creates, sustains, and destroys everything. Yet again, that is another allegory to Shiva. Let me take a quick sip here and make sure that you guys are hearing me. Looks like it's all good. It sure is. Okay, good. Okay, take a sip. Okay, so Krishna says, "Again, O mighty armed Arjuna, listen to my supreme word, which I shall declare to thee, who art beloved, for thy welfare." Commentary: The all-compassionate Lord, in his mercy, wants to encourage Arjuna and cheer him up, and so he himself comes forward to give him instructions without any request having been made by Arjuna. Continuing, Krishna says, "Neither the hosts of the gods nor the great sages know my origin, for in every way I am the source of all the gods and the great sages. He who knows me as unborn and beginningless, as the great Lord of the worlds, he among mortals is undiluted. He is liberated from all sins." Commentary: As the Supreme Being is the cause of all worlds, he is beingless. As he is the source of all the gods and the great sages, so there is no source for his own existence. He is beingless. He is unborn. He is the great Lord of all worlds. Continuing, Krishna says, "Intellect, wisdom, non-delusion, forgiveness, truth, self-restraint, calmness, happiness, pain, birth or existence, death or non-existence, fear, and also fearlessness, non-injury, equanimity, contentment, austerity, fame, beneficence, ill-famed, these different kinds of qualities of beings arrive from me alone. The 7 great sages, the ancient 4, and also the Manus, possessed of powers like me, on account of their minds being fixed on me, were born of my mind. From them are these creatures born in this world. He who in truth knows these manifold manifestations by my being and this yoga power of mine becomes established in the unshakable yoga. There is no doubt about it. I am the source of all. From me everything evolves. Understanding thus, the wise endowed me with meditation, worship me. With their minds and lives entirely absorbed in me, enlightening each other and always speaking of me, they are satisfied and delighted. To them who are ever steadfast, worshipping me with love, I give yoga, the discrimination by which they come to me. In commentary, the devotees who have dedicated themselves to the Lord, who are ever harmonious and self-abiding, who adore him with intense love, who are ever devout, obtain the divine grace. Continuing, Krishna says, out of a mere compassion for them, I, dwelling within their self, destroy the darkness born of ignorance by the luminous lamp of knowledge. So there's the luminous lamp of knowledge yet again, right? Jesus, again, says you don't light a lamp and then put it under a table and hide it. So, interesting. Arjuna says, "Thou art the supreme Brahman, the supreme abode, or the supreme light, the supreme purifier, the eternal divine person, the primeval God, unborn and omnipresent. All the sages have thus declared thee, as also the divine sage Narada, also Asita, Devala, Vyasa, and now thou thyself sayest to me. I believe all that is thou sayest to me as true, O Krishna. Verily, blessed Lord, neither the gods nor the demons know thy manifestation, origin. Verily, thou thyself knowest thyself by thyself, O Supreme Person, O Source and Lord of beings, O God of gods, O Ruler of the world. Thou shouldest indeed tell without reserve of thy divine glories by which thou existest, pervading all these worlds. Nothing or none else can do so. How should I ever meditating know thee, O Yogin? What aspects or things, O blessed Lord, art thou to be thought of by me? Tell me again in detail, O Krishna, of thy yogic power and glory, for I am not satisfied with what I have heard of thy life-giving and nectar-like speech." And Krishna responds, "Very well, now I will declare to thee my divine glories in their prominence, O Arjuna. There is no end to their detailed description." Commentary: the Lord's divine glories are illimitable. I am the Self, with a big capital S, O Gudakesha, seated in the hearts of all beings. I am the beginning, I am the middle, and also the end of all beings. Among the 12 Adityas, I am Vishnu. Among the luminaries, the radiant sun. I am Marichi. Among the 7, or 49, Maruts. Among the stars, the moon am I. You see, that's so crazy. Because again, these are a lot of references to Shiva here. Because Shiva always has the crescent moon on his forehead, always. Just saying. Let's see here. Among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda, I am the Vasava. Among the gods, among the senses, I am the mind, and I am intelligence among living beings. And among the Rudras, I am Shankara. Among the Yakshas and Yakshasas, the Lord of Wealth, Kubera. Among the Vasus, I am Pavaka, fire. And among the 7 mountains, I am the Meru, the one in the middle. And among the household priests of kings, O Arjuna, know me to be Chief Brihaspati. Among the army generals, I am Skanda. Among lakes, I am the ocean. Among the great sages, I am Brigu. Among words, I am the monosyllable Aum. Among sacrifices, I am the sacrifice of silent repetition. Among immovable things, the Himalayas, I am. Commentary: repetition of the mantra is regarded as the best of all yajnas or sacrifices. There is no loss or injury in this yajna. Manu says, whatever else the Brahmana may or may not do, he attains salvation by japa alone. Among the trees, I am, and maybe that's the reason why, Christians have Amen, the Muslims have Amin. Even the Eastern Christians say Amin. Of course, it's slightly different because it's the en or the in, but it still contains the word. So fascinating. Let's see here. Among the trees, I am the Pipul. Among the divine sages, I am Narada. Among Gandharvas, I am the Chitrathra. Among the perfected, the sage Kapila. Know me as the Uchchaisravas, born of nectar among horses. Among lordly elephants, I am the Airavata, and among men, the king. Among weapons, I am the thunderbolt, which is always, by the way, an allegory for knowledge. Okay. Among cows, I am the wish-fulfilling cow called Surabi. I am the progenitor, the god of love. Among serpents, I am Vasuki. I am Ananta among the Nagas. I am Varuna among water deities. Aryaman among the mains. I am Yama among the governors. And I am Prahlad among the demons. Among the reckoners, I am time. Among beasts, I am their king, the lion, the Garuda among birds. Among the purifiers or the speeders, I am the wind. Rama among the warriors am I. Among the fishes, I am the shark. Among the streams, I am the Ganga or Ganges. Among creations, I am the beginning, the middle, and also the end, O Arjuna. Among the sciences, I am the science of the self, and I am logic among controversialists. Among the letters of the alphabet, the letter A. I am the dual among the compounds. I am verily the inexhaustible or everlasting time. I am the dispenser of the fruits of actions, having faces in all directions. Now, I'm just going to quickly make a comment. This is way more important among the letters of the alphabet, the letter A, I am. Now, this right here is way more important than you guys could even imagine, especially those of you that have kept away from things like Kabbalah and stuff like that. Like, when I get into this and the whole real meaning behind the alphabetical letters, it's gonna be interesting because let's just say it's going to be interesting. I'm going to try to put something together for next week for the alphabetical thing because you'll be surprised how it literally connects with geometrical shapes, with the way these gods are created in their statues, things like that. Like it's so, there's so much to that. It's really insane. So continuing, Krishna says, and I just wanted to point that's very important. Okay, this whole I am part. And I am all-devouring death and prosperity of those who are to be prosperous. Among feminine qualities, I am fame, prosperity, speech, memory, intelligence, firmness, and forgiveness. Among the hymns, also, I am the Brihatsaman. Among matras, Gayatri am I. Among the months, I am Magasirsa. Among season, I am the flowery season. I am the gambling fraudulent, I am the splendor of the splendid, I am victory, I am determination of those who are determined, I am the goodness of the good. Commentary. Of the various methods of defrauding others, I am gambling, such as this dice play. Gambling is my manifestation. I am power in the powerful, I am victory in the victorious, I am effort in those who make that effort. So, it's interesting. Gambling is his manifestation, but it's kind of the whole idea of I am the effort in those who then make effort, who try. And in a lot of ways, life is a big gamble. All the time. Among Vrishnis, I am Vasudeva. Among the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. Among sages, I am Vyasa. Among poets, I am Usana the poet. Among the punishers, I am the scepter. Among those who seek victory, I am statesmanship. And also among secrets, I am silence. Knowledge among knowers, I am. And whatever whatever is the seed of all beings, that also I am. O Arjuna, there is no being, whether moving or unmoving, that can exist without me. Commentary. I am the primeval seed from which all creation has come into existence. I am the seed of everything. I am the self of everything. Nothing can exist without me. Everything is my nature. I am the soul of everything. Continuing, Krishna says, there is no end to my divine glories, O Arjuna, but this is a brief statement of me, of the particulars of my divine glories. Whatever being there is that is glorious, prosperous, or powerful, that know thou to be a manifestation of a part of my splendor. But of what avail to thee is the knowledge of all these details, O Arjuna? I exist, supporting this whole world by one part of myself. Continuing the yoga of the vision of the cosmic form. Summary of the 11th discourse. Arjuna's doubts having been removed through a clear description of the nature of the Atman and the origin and destruction of all created things. And the Atman means the self, your higher self, your what you are, like the Krishna, the Christ in you. Just continuing. The origin and destruction of all... Arjuna's doubts having been removed through a clear description of the nature of the Atman and the origin and destruction of all created things, he is now ready to behold the cosmic vision. Krishna grants him the divine sight, by means of which Arjuna beholds the Lord as the vast cosmic manifestation. The vision is at once all-comprehensive and simultaneous. In every direction, Arjuna sees the Lord as the entire universe. All the created worlds, gods, beings, creatures, and things stand revealed as the one gigantic body of the Lord. And I'm just going to stop here for a second. The video that I did earlier about my vision and how that changed my life was very much the way this is. It was an all-encompassing thing. It was like everything that I was physically experiencing just disappeared, and I was experiencing something else all at the same time. So, continuing, Arjuna further sees that the great cosmic drama is set in motion and controlled by the almighty power of the Lord. He will alone prevail in all things and actions, both good and bad. The Lord exhorts him to fight, he being only an apparent cause of the destruction of his enemies. Arjuna is unable to bear the pressure of the sudden expansion of consciousness and is filled with fear. He begs the Lord to assume once more his usual form. Krishna reiterates that this vision cannot be had through any amount of austerity, studies, sacrifices, or philanthropic acts. Supreme devotion is the only means by which one can have access to this grand vision. So Arjuna says, by this explanation of the highest secret concerning the self, which thou hast spoken out of compassion towards me, my delusion is gone. Commentary. After hearing the glories of the Lord, Arjuna has an intense longing to have the wonderful cosmic vision. The origin, and Arjuna continues, the origin and the destruction of beings verily have been heard by me in detail from thee, O Lord, lotus-eyed Lord, and also thy inexhaustible greatness. Now, O Supreme Lord, as thou hast thus described thyself, O Supreme Person, I wish to see thy divine form. If thou, O Lord, thinkest it possible for me to see it, do thou then, O Lord of the yogis, show me thy imperishable self. And Krishna responds, "Behold, Arjuna, O Arjuna, my form is by the hundreds and the thousands of different sorts, divine in various colors and shapes. Behold the Adityas, the Vasus, the Rudras, the two Asvins, and also the Maruts. Behold many wonders never seen before, O Arjuna. But now behold, O Arjuna, in this my body, the whole universe centered in one, including the moving and unmoving, whatever else thou desirest to see. But thou art not able to see, to behold me with these thine own eyes. I give thee the divine eye, the single divine eye. Behold my lordly yoga." Commentary: no fleshly eye can behold me in my cosmic form. One can only see me only through the eye of intuition, the divine eye. It should not be confused with seeing through the physical eye or through the mind. It is an inner divine experience attained through intense devotion and concentration. Sanjaya says, having thus spoken, King, the great Lord of Yoga, Hari Krishna, showed to Arjuna his supreme form as the Lord, with numerous mouths and eyes, with numerous wonderful sights and numerous divine ornaments, with numerous divine weapons uplifted. Such a form he showed, wearing divine garlands and apparel appointed with divine unguents, the all-powerful, resplendent being, endless, with faces on all sides. If the splendor of 1,000 suns were to blaze out at once simultaneously in the sky, that would be the splendor of that mighty being, great soul. There, in the body of the God of gods, Arjuna then saw the whole universe resting in the one, with its many groups. Then Arjuna, filled with wonder and with hair standing on end, bowed down his head to the Lord and spoke with joined palms. Arjuna says, "I behold all the gods, O God, in thy body, and hosts of various classes of beings, Brahma, the Lord seated on the lotus, all the sages and the celestial serpents. I see thee of boundless form on every side, with many arms, stomachs, mouths, eyes. Neither the end nor the middle, nor also the beginning do I see, O Lord of the universe, O cosmic form. I see thee with the diadem, the club, the discus, a mass of radiance shining everywhere, very hard to look at, blazing all around like burning fire, and the sun immeasurable." This is, again, all of these are actually descriptions of Shiva as well, and the famous thing with Shiva dancing on the beaten dwarf that he beats with the club, and he's holding, is surrounded by a ring of fire. I just wanted to put that out there. Blazing around him like a burning fire in the sun, immeasurable. Thou art the imperishable, the supreme being, worthy of being known. Thou art the great treasure house of this universe. Thou art the imperishable protector of the eternal Dharma. Thou art the ancient person I deem. I see thee without beginning, middle, or end, infinite in power, of endless arms, the sun, the moon being thy eyes, the burning fire thy mouth, heating the entire universe with thy radiance. The space between the earth and the heaven and all quarters are filled by thee alone. Having seen this, thy wonderful and terrible form, the three worlds are trembling with fear, O great soul being. Verily, into thee enter these hosts of gods. Some extol thee in fear with joined palms, may it be well. Saying thus, bands of great sages and perfected ones praise thee with complete hymns. The Rudras, Adityas, Vasus, Sadyas, Visvedevas, the two Asvins, and Maruts, the names and hosts of celestial singers, Yakshas, demons, and the perfected ones, are all looking at thee in great astonishment. Having beheld thy immeasurable form with many mouths and eyes, O mighty armed and many armed, thighs and feet with many stomachs, and fearful with many teeth, the world are terrified, and so am I. On seeing thee, the cosmic form, touching the sky, shining in many colors, with mouths wide open, with large fiery eyes, I am terrified at heart and find neither courage nor peace, O Vishnu. Having seen thy mouth, fearful, with teeth blazing like the fires of cosmic dissolution, I know not the four quarters, nor do I find peace. Have mercy, O Lord of gods, abode of the universe. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, with the hosts of kings of the earth, Bhishma, Drona, and Karna, with the chief among all our warriors, they hurriedly enter into thy mouths with terrible teeth and fearful to behold. Some are found sticking in the gaps between the teeth with their heads crushed to powder. Verily, just as many torrents of rivers flow towards the ocean, even so these heroes of the world of men enter thy flaming mouths. Arjuna sees all the warriors whom he did not wish to kill rushing to death. He knows now that the Lord has already destroyed them, so why should he worry about the inevitable? As moths hurriedly rush into a blazing fire for their own destruction, so also these creatures hurriedly rush into thy mouths for their own destruction. Thou lickest up, devouring all the worlds on every side with thy flaming mouths. Thy fierce rays, filling the whole world with radiance, are burning, O Vishnu. Tell me who thou art, so fierce in form. Salutations to thee, O God supreme. Have mercy, I desire to know thee, the original being. I know not, indeed, thy doing. And Krishna continues and responds, I am the mighty world destroying time, and now engaged in destroying the worlds. Even without thee, none of the warriors arrayed in this hostile armies shall live. Therefore, stand up and obtain fame, conquer the enemies, and enjoy the unrivaled kingdom. Verily, they have already been slain by me. Be thou a mere instrument, O Arjuna. Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and all the other courageous warriors, these have already been slain by me. Do not thou kill. Be not distressed with fear. Do thou kill, and be not distressed with fear. Fight, and thou shalt conquer thy enemies in battle. And Sanjaya says, the one who is telling the king about this battle, having heard that speech of Lord Krishna, the crowned one, Arjuna, with joined palms, trembling, prostrated himself, again addressed Krishna in a choked voice, bowing down, overwhelmed with fear. It is meet, O Krishna, that the world delights and rejoices in thy praise. Meet as in M-E-E-T. Demons fly in fear to all quarters, and hosts of the perfected ones bow to thee. And why should they not, O great soul, bow to thee who art greater than all else, the primal cause of even of Brahma, the creator, O infinite being, O Lord of the gods, O abode of the universe? Thou art the imperishable, the being, the non-being, and that which is supreme, that which is beyond the being and the non-being. Commentary. The Lord is Mahatma. He is greater than all else. He is the imperishable, so he is the proper object of worship, love, and delight. Continuing, Krishna says, Thou art the primal God. Oh, wait, is that Krishna? Oh, it's Arjuna. Arjuna says, Thou art the primal God, the ancient Purusha, the supreme refuge of this universe, the knower, the knowable, and the supreme abode. By thee is the universe pervaded of being of infinite forms. Thou art Vayu, Yama, Agni, Varuna, the moon, the creator, the great-grandfather. Salutations, salutations unto thee 1,000 times, and again salutations, salutations unto thee. Salutations to thee from front and from behind. Salutations to thee from every side, O all, thou infinite in power and prowess, pervades all, wherefore thou art all. Whatever I have presumptuously uttered from love or carelessness, addressing thee as O Krishna, O Yadava, O friend, regarding thee merely as a friend, unknowing of this thy greatness, in whatever way I may have insulted thee for the sake of fun while I play, reposing, sitting, or at meals, when alone with thee, O Achyuta, or in company, that I implore thee, immeasurable one, to forgive. Thou art the Father of this world, unmoving and moving. Thou art to be adored by this world. Thou art the greatest Guru, for none there exists who is equal to thee. How then can there be another superior to thee in the three worlds, O being of unequaled power? Therefore, bowing down, prostrating my body, I crave thy forgiveness, O adorable Lord, as a father forgives his son, a friend his dear friend, a lover his beloved, even so shouldest thou forgive me, O God. I am delighted, having seen what has never been seen before, and yet my mind is distressed with fear. Show me that previous form only, O God. Have mercy, O God of gods, O God of the universe. I desire to see thee as before, crowned, bearing a mace with a discus in hand, in thy former form only, having 4 arms, O thousand-armed cosmic form being. The blessed Lord said, O Arjuna, this cosmic form has graciously been shown to thee by me, by my own yogic power. Full of splendor, primeval and infinite, this cosmic form of mine has never been seen before by anyone other than thyself. Neither by the study of the Vedas and sacrifices, or by gifts, or by rituals, nor by severe austerities can I be seen in this form in the world of men by other than thyself, O great hero of the Kurus, Arjuna. Be not afraid or bewildered on seeing such a terrible form of mine as this, with thy fear entirely dispelled, and with the gladdened heart now behold again the former form of mine. And then Sanjaya says, having thus spoken to Arjuna, Krishna again showed his own form, and the great soul Krishna assumed his gentle form, consoled him who was terrified. And Arjuna said, having seen this thy gentle human form, O Krishna. Now am I composed and restored to my own nature. And Krishna responds, very hard indeed is it to see this form of mine which thou hast seen. Even the gods are ever longing to behold it. Neither by the Vedas, nor by austerity, nor by gift, nor by sacrifice can I be seen in this form as thou hast seen me so easily. But by single-minded devotion can I, of this form, be known and seen in reality and also entered into, O Arjuna. He who does all actions for me, who looks upon me as the supreme, who is devoted to me, who is free from attachment, who bears enmity towards no creature, he comes to me, O Arjuna. And commentary. This is the essence of the whole teaching of the Gita. He who practices this teaching attains supreme bliss and immortality, such as one realizes him and enters into his being, becoming completely one with him. This verse contains the summary of the entire Gita philosophy. I can't disagree with that at all. The Yoga of Devotion. Summary of the 12th discourse, and I think these get shorter, so it should be ending pretty soon. The 12th discourse indicates that the path of devotion is easier than the path of knowledge. I agree in a lot of ways, actually. In this path of the aspirant worships God in his cosmic form of the Supreme Personality. He develops a loving relationship with him, adores him, and remembers him, and chants his glorious name. He thus effects union with the Lord and attains not only his formless aspect, but also the Lord as manifest universe. The path of knowledge, whereby the aspirant meditates on the formless Brahman, is more difficult, as he has to give up his attachment to the body from the very beginning. He has to have dispassion for the things of the world. How to practice devotion. Krishna asked Arjuna to fix his entire mind on him. As often as the mind wanders, it should be brought back to the Lord. If this process of concentration is difficult, he should dedicate all his actions to him, feeling that it is his power that activates everything. If this also is beyond his ability, he should offer all his actions to the Lord, abandoning the desire for their fruits. He should take complete refuge in him. The devotee who surrenders himself to the Lord attains perfect peace. The Lord goes on to describe the qualities that a true devotee possesses. He neither attaches himself to anything, nor does he have any aversion to things. He has a balanced mind under all the circumstances. He is not agitated by the happenings of the world, nor does he himself cause any agitation in others. He is perfectly desireless and rejoices in the Lord within. He sees equality everywhere, being untouched by sorrow, fear, honor, as also dishonor. He is perfectly content as he has surrendered his entire being to the Lord. Arjuna says, to those devotees who ever steadfast thus worship thee, and those also who worship the imperishable and unmanifested, which of them are better versed in yoga? Commentary, the 12th discourse indicates that bhakti yoga is much easier than jnana yoga, or the yoga of knowledge. Continuing, Krishna responds, those who, fixing their minds on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these are the best in yoga, in my opinion. Those who worship the imperishable, the indefinable, the unmanifested, the omnipresent, the unthinkable, the eternal, and the immovable, having restrained all the senses, even-minded everywhere, intent on the welfare of all beings, verily they also come unto me. Greater is their trouble whose minds are set on the unmanifested, for the goal, the unmanifested, is very difficult for the embodied to reach. Commentary. The embodied, those who identify themselves with their bodies, so people who live a completely materialistic lifestyle and world and understanding and perception. The imperishable self is very hard to reach for those who are attached to their bodies. Their restless minds will not be able to get fixed on the attributes of the attributeless self. I definitely agree with that. Continuing, Krishna continues, but to those who worship me, renounce all actions in me, regard me as the supreme goal, meditating on me with single-minded yoga, to those whose minds are set on me, O Arjuna, verily I become ere long the savior out of the oceans of the mortal samsara. Fix thy mind on me only, thy intellect on me, then thou say no doubt in me. No doubt live in me alone hereafter. Yeah, I don't know. If thou art unable to fix thy mind steadily on me, then by the yoga of constant practice do thou seek to reach me, O Arjuna. If thou art unable to practice even this abhyasa yoga, be thou then intent on doing actions for my sake, even by doing actions for my sake, thou shalt attain perfection. If thou art unable to even do this, then, taking refuge in union with me, renounce the fruits of all actions with self-controlled. Better indeed is knowledge than practice. Than knowledge, meditation is. Oh, let me get back there. Better indeed is knowledge than practice. Then knowledge, meditation is better. Then meditation, the renunciation of the fruits of action. Peace immediately follows renunciation. He who hates no creature, who is friendly and compassionate to all, who is free from attachment and egoism, balanced in pleasure and pain and forgiving, ever content, steady in meditation, possessed with firm conviction, self-control with mind and intellect, dedicated to me, he, my devotee, is dear to me. He by whom the world is not agitated and who cannot be agitated by the world and who is freed from joy, envy, fear, and anxiety, he is dear to me. He who is freer from wants, pure, expert, unconcerned, and untroubled, renouncing all undertakings or commencements, he who is thus devoted to me is dear to me. He who neither rejoices nor hates nor grieves nor desires, renouncing good and evil, and who is full of devotion is dear to me. Commentary. He does not rejoice when he has attained desirable objects, nor does he grieve when he parts with his cherished objects. Further, he does not desire the unattained. Continuing, Krishna says, he who is the name of foe and friend and in honor and dishonor, who is the same in cold and heat and in pleasure and in pain, who is free from attachment, he to whom censure and praise are equal, to who is silent, content with anything, homeless, of a steady mind and of full devotion, that man is dear to me. They, verily, who follow this immortal dharma, doctrine or law, as described above, endowed with faith, regarding me as their supreme goal, they, the devotees, are exceedingly dear to me. Now, I will just, this last sloka here, this last line, this verse, imagine if one looked at the Old Testament and the New Testament, and when they constantly say that, oh, are they living by the law and this kind of stuff, what do they really mean? You know, because this, the way that it gets explained here, is a completely different idea behind what it is to live under the law. It doesn't have to do with this written type of thing where you get punished by a bunch of priests and all these other things. That has nothing to do with it at all. And I find that, and there are so many comparisons between the Old Testament and the Vedas, as well as the New Testament, but the Old Testament big time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Continuing chapter 13, the yoga of distinction between the field and the knower of the field. Oh, this should be interesting. In this discourse, we have one of the most significant, most illuminating, and most inspiring, and most mystical portions of the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord gives us a wonderfully revealing insight into the human individual. It is the metaphysics of man, the unknown, the immortal soul. Within its physical embodiment is the main theme of this discourse. The supreme transcendental spirit, which is the eternal substratum beyond both, is also described in a wonderful manner. The knower of the supreme reality is instantly liberated. The blessed Lord tells us that the knowledge of the field and the knower of the field is the true knowledge. So the highest and the best knowledge grants us divine wisdom and spiritual illumination that lead to divine beatitude. This body is the field. The immortal soul, yourself, ourselves, right? Dwelling in the body is the knower of the field. Verily, it is the Supreme Being who has projected himself and assumed the form of this knower of the field within the body. This self is none other than that. Thus, Lord Krishna explains the mystery of the individual soul dwelling within this mortal body. This knowledge constitutes the main subject matter of all the scriptures and the highest philosophical works. 5 elements, the ego, the mind, intellect, and the 10 organs, desire and aversion, and such factors constitute the field. Next follows a wonderful summing up of what constitutes true knowledge. Then follows the declaration of the Supreme Soul, the knowledge of which grants us immortality. The supreme reality is the one universal essence present everywhere. It pervades all. It shines within the inmost chambers of our hearts. It is everything. It is the one seer, the witness, the guide, the sustainer, the experiencer, and Lord of all. One who knows this mystery is not bound by activity even in the midst of life. When we perceive the supreme presence dwelling in all beings, we cannot injure anyone. Krishna asks us to see and know the difference between the field, body or prakriti, and the knower of the field, spirit or purusha, and thus reach the self with a capital S. This is the teaching and the message of this illuminating discourse. So let's get into it. Arjuna, I wish to learn about the nature, matter, and spirit, soul, the field, and the knower of the field, knowledge, and that which ought to be known. And any of you guys that know anything about quantum physics, and you've never read the Gita, this should be interesting for you. Krishna responds, this body, O Arjuna, is called the field. He who knows it is called the knower of the field by those who know of them, that is, by the sages. Do thou also know me as knower of the field in all fields, O Arjuna. Knowledge of both the field and the knower of the field is considered by me to be the knowledge. So in other words, in quantum physics, they talk about the observed and the observable and how they are one and the same in essence. So, isn't it? I think it's fascinating. I'm definitely had to do a crossover science religious video at some point because there's a lot that is really amazing. Continuing, what the field is and what of nature, what is its modifications are and whence it is, and also who he is and what his powers are. Hear all that from me in brief. Sages have sung in many ways in various distinctive chants and also in the suggestive words indicative of the absolute, full of reasoning and decisive. The great elements, egoism, intellect, and also unmanifested nature, the 10 senses and one and 5 objects of the 10 senses in one, and the 5 objects of the senses. Commentary, great elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, are so called because they pervade all modifications of matter. The 10 senses are the 5 organs of knowledge, ears, skin, eyes, tongue, nose, and the 5 organs of actions, hand, feet, mouth, anus, generative organ. The one, this in the mind, the 5 objects of the senses are sound, touch, form, color, taste, and smell. So continuing, Krishna continues, desire, hatred, pleasure, pain, the aggregate, i.e. the body, fortitude, and intelligence. The field thus has been described briefly with its modifications. Humility, unpretentiousness, non-injury, forgiveness, uprightness, service of the teacher, purity, steadfastness, and self-control, indifference to the objects of the senses, also absence of egoism, perception of, or reflection on, the evil in birth, death, old age, sickness, and pain, non-attachment, non-identification of the self with son, wife, home, and the rest, and constant even-mindedness on the attainment of the desirable and the undesirable, unswerving devotion unto me by the yoga of non-separation, resort to solitary places, distaste for the society of men, constancy in self-knowledge, perception of the end of true knowledge, this is declared to be knowledge, and what is opposed to it is ignorance. I will declare that which has been known, knowing which one attains to immortality, the beginningless supreme Brahman, called neither being nor non-being. With hands and feet everywhere, with eyes and heads and mouths everywhere, with ears everywhere, he exists in the worlds, enveloping all. Shining in the functions of all the senses, yet without the senses, unattached, yet supported all, devoid of qualities, yet their experiencer. Without and within all beings, the unmoving and also the moving, because of his subtlety, unknowable, and near and far away is that. Okay, let me go back because I butchered that. Without and within all beings, the immovable, unmovable, and also the moving, because of his subtlety, unknowable, and near and far away is that. And undivided, yet he exists as if divided in beings. He is to be known as the supporter of beings. He devours as he generates also. Again, here we have Kronos or, whatever, devouring his children, quote unquote. This is what it means. That the light of all lights is beyond darkness. It is said to be knowledge, the knowable, and the goal of knowledge, seated in the hearts of all. Thus, the field, as well as knowledge and the knowable, have been briefly stated. My devotee, knowing this, enters into my being. Know thou that nature and spirit are beginningless, and know also that all modifications and qualities are born of nature. In the production of the effect and the cause, nature, matter, is said to be the cause. In the experience of pleasure and pain, the soul is said to be the cause. The soul, seated in nature, experiences the qualities born of nature. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of his birth in good and evil wombs. The supreme soul in this body is also called the spectator, the permitter, the supporter, the enjoyer, the great Lord, and the Supreme Self. He who thus knows spirit and matter together with the qualities in whatever condition he may be, he is not reborn. Some, by meditation, behold the self and in the self, by the self, all capital letters, by the way. Others by the yoga of knowledge, and others by the yoga of action. Others also, not knowing thus, worship, having heard of it from others, they too cross beyond death, regarding that they have heard as the supreme refuge. Whatever a being is born, wherever a being is born, whether it be unmoving or removing, know thou, O best of the Bharatas, Arjuna, that it is from the union between the field and its knower. He sees who sees the Supreme Lord existing equally in all beings, the unperishing within the perishing. Commentary: birth is at the root cause of the modifications of change, growth, decay, and death. The other changes of state manifest after birth of the body. But the Lord is changeless, and he is birthless, decayless, and deathless. Continuing, Krishna says, because he who sees the same Lord dwelling equally everywhere does not destroy the self. By the self, he goes to the highest goal. He sees who sees that all actions are performed by nature alone, and that the self is actionless. When a man sees the whole variety of beings as resting in the one and spreading forth from that alone, he becomes Brahman. Commentary: a man attains to unity with the Supreme when he knows or realizes through intuition, this is important, through intuition, that all these manifold forms are rooted in the one. Like waves in water, like rays in the sun, so also all forms are rooted in the one. This is like waves in water, this is an allegory that's often used in Vedic and yogic discourses. The waves are part of the ocean, essentially, but it's not the ocean. Whereas the ocean has, the waves are part of it, but really let's just say, let's just say this. I got that backwards. Essentially, waves require an ocean to exist, but ocean doesn't require waves to exist, is what I'm saying to you. Okay, so it's like there is the oneness within it itself, and the things that come out of that oneness are like representative of quote unquote separated parts of it, which it really is not. So I'm sorry I butchered that, but I got back to it. So continuing, being without beginning and devoid of any qualities, the Supreme Self, imperishable through dwelling in the body, O Arjuna, neither acts nor is tainted. As the all-pervading ether is not tainted because of its subtlety, so the self seated everywhere in the body is not tainted. Just as the one sun illuminates the whole world, so also the Lord of the field, the Supreme Self, illuminates the whole field, O Arjuna. They who through the eye of knowledge perceive the distinction between the field and its knower, and also the liberation from the nature of being, they go to the Supreme. Commentary: they who know through the eye of intuition opened by meditation and the instructions of the Guru and scriptures that the field is insentient, the doer changing and infinite, and the knower of the field is pure consciousness, the non-doer unchanging and infinite, and who also perceive the non-existence of nature, ignorance, the unmanifested, the material cause of being, they attain the Supreme. All right, and that part's done. Part 14, the yoga of division of the three gunas. Knowledge of the three cosmic qualities of gunas, namely sattva, rajas, and tamas, is now given through this discourse. The knowledge of these three gunas, which hold the entire universe and all creatures under their sway, is of vital importance to each and every one for their progress and happiness in life. Without this knowledge, one will be forever bound by sorrow. In this knowledge, we have the secret of success in worldly life as well as in spiritual life. Therefore, one should inquire this precious knowledge. Lord Krishna reveals that these three qualities compose the cosmic nature. This cosmic nature is the primordial source and origin of the entire creation and all things in it. Hence, all things created are subject to their influence and irresistible power. The individual soul also is bound to the body by these three qualities present in cosmic nature. The supreme beings brings about creation through the help of his Prakriti, again nature, endowed with these threefold qualities. The highest of these three qualities is sattva. It is pure. It brings about happiness, wisdom, and also illumination. The second quality of rajas gives rise to the passion manifested by intense attachment and greed. It causes sorrow, suffering. The third, termed tamas, is the worst of all. It arises due to ignorance and the result in darkness, lethargy, and delusion. Krishna asks us to diligently endeavor to cast out tamas from our nature. We should control and master rajas, and by holding it in check, wisely divert its power towards good kinds of activities. Sattva should be carefully cultivated, developed, and conserved in order to enable us to attain immortality. The realized sage, of course, goes beyond all these qualities, for although it is sattva that enables him to reach God, even this quality will bind him if he is attached to it. The aspirant should know that the symptoms and signs of their presence in his personality and acquired a knowledge of their subtle workings, then only can he maintain an unhampered and smooth progress in all activities of his life. Both secular as well as spiritual, Lord Krishna teaches us that this important subject in this discourse from the 9th to the 18th verse. He declares that one who rises beyond all three gunas through spiritual practices becomes free from birth, death, old age, and sorrow, and enjoys immortality. In reply to a question from Arjuna, the Blessed Lord describes the marks of one who has risen above three gunas and states that if one constantly worships him with exclusive devotion, one will attain the highest divine experience and supreme peace and blessedness. So, quick sip. It's taking a lot longer than I thought. Krishna says, I will again declare to thee the supreme knowledge, the best of all knowledge, having known which all the sages have gone to the supreme perfection after this life. They who have taken refuge in this knowledge attain to unity with me, are neither born at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of dissolution. Commentary. In this verse, it is knowledge of the supreme self that is eulogized by the Lord. Continuing, Krishna says, my womb is the great Brahma, and that I place the germ, thence, O Arjuna, is the birth of all beings. Whatever forms are produced, O Arjuna, in any womb whatsoever, the great Brahma is their womb, and I am the seed-giving father. Purity, passion, and inertia, these qualities, O mighty armed Arjuna, are born of nature, bind fast in the body, the embodied and the indestructible. Commentary. The three gunas are present in all human beings. None is free from the operation of any one of these three qualities. They are not constant. Sometimes sattva predominates, and at other times rajas or tamas predominates. One should analyze and stand as a witness to these three qualities. That's a good point. Krishna continues, of these sattva, which form is the stainlessness, is luminous and healthy, binds by attachment to knowledge and to happiness, O sinless one. Know thou, Rajas, to be of the nature of passion and the source of thirst for sensual enjoyment. And attachment, it binds fast, O Arjuna, the embodied one, by attachment to action. And remember, this means sacrifice as well, okay? So understand that the entire idea of sacrifice here is 100% completely different than what people consider sacrifice in the old world. I just want to throw that out there, okay? I'll be doing a whole video about that because I think people really need to wrap their heads around these ideas if they're going to understand the past. Continuing, Krishna says, but know thou tamas to be born of ignorance, deluding all embodied beings. It binds fast, O Arjuna, by heedlessness, sleep, and indolence. Sattva attaches to happiness, rajas to action, O Arjuna, while tamas, shrouding knowledge, attaches to heedlessness only. Now sattva prevails, O Arjuna, having overpowered rajas and tamas, now rajas having overpowered sattva and tamas, and now tamas having overpowered sattva and rajas. When through every gate, quote-unquote sense, in this body the wisdom's light shines, then it may be known as that sattva is predominant. Greed, activity, the undertaking of actions, restlessness, longing for these arise when rajas is predominant, O Arjuna. Darkness, inertness, heedlessness, delusion, these arise when tamas is predominant, O Arjuna. If the embodied one meets with death when sattva has become predominant, then he attains to the spotless worlds of the knowers of the highest. Meeting death in rajas, he is born among those who are attached to action, and dying in tamas, he is born in the womb of the senseless. The fruit of good action, they say, is sattvic and pure. The fruit of rajas is pain, and the ignorance is the fruit of tamas. From sattva rises knowledge and greed, from rajas heedlessness, from the delusion arises from tamas and ignorance also. Those who are seated in sattva proceeds upwards, and the rajasic dwell in the middle, and the tamasic, abiding in the function of the lower guna, go downwards. When the seer beholds no agent other than the gunas, knowing that which is higher than them, he attains to my being. Commentary: the seer knows that the gunas alone are responsible for all actions, and he is distinct from them. Continuing, the embodied one, having crossed beyond these three gunas out of which the body is evolved, is freed from birth, death, decay, and pain, attains to immortality. Arjuna responds, what are the marks of him who has crossed over these three qualities, O Lord? What is his conduct, and how does he go beyond these three qualities? Krishna responds, light, activity, and delusion, when they are present, O Arjuna, he hates not, nor does he long for them when they are absent. He who, seated like one unconcerned, is not moved by the qualities, and who, knowing that the qualities are active, is self-centered and moves not. Alike in pleasure and pain, who dwells in the self, to whom a clod of earth, stone, and gold are alike, to whom the dear and the unfriendly are alike, firm, the same in censure and praise, the same in honor and dishonor, the same to friend and foe, abandoning all undertaking, he is said to have crossed the qualities. And this is probably why Jesus said, turn the other cheek and love your enemy, right? Interesting. There are two very similar ideas here. And he who serves me with unswerving devotion, he, crossing beyond the qualities, is fit for becoming Brahman. For I am the abode of Brahman, the immortal and the immutable, the everlasting Dharma, and the absolute bliss. Chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Spirit. Summary of the 15th discourse. I think there's only 4 left, so we are getting very close here. This discourse is entitled Purushottama Yoga, or the Yoga of the Supreme Person. Here, Lord Krishna tells us about the ultimate source of this invisible phenomenal universe from which all things have come into being, just like a great tree with all its roots, trunks, branches, twigs, leaves, flowers, and fruits which spring forth from the earth, which itself support the tree in which it is rooted. Isn't that funny how we have the quote-unquote tree of life represented in ancient artwork across the world? Continuing, Sri Krishna declares that the Supreme Being is the source of all existence and refers allegorically to this universe as being, like an inverted tree whose roots are in Para Brahman, and whose spreading branches and foliage constitute all the things and factors that go to making up this creation of variegated phenomenon. This is a very mysterious quote-unquote tree, which is very difficult to understand, being a product of his inscrutable power of Maya, hence a marvelous apparent in appearance without having actual reality. One who fully understands the nature of this samsara tree goes beyond Maya. To be attached to it is to be caught in it. The surest way of transcending this samsara or worldly life is by wielding the excellent weapon of dispassion and non-attachment. In verses 4 and 5 of this discourse, the Lord tells us how one goes beyond the invisible samsara and attains the supreme imperishable status, attaining which one does not have to return to this mortal world of pain and death. Lord Krishna also describes for us the wonderful mysteries of his presence in this universe and the supreme place he occupies in sustaining everything there. The Lord declares that it is a part of himself that manifests here as the individual soul in each body. He himself is the indwelling oversoul beyond the self. He is the effulgence and inherent in the sun, moon, and fire. He was present at the nourishment element of the earth. He is the inner witness of all beings. He is the supreme knower, even beyond Vedic knowledge. He is the resplendent person who is beyond both this perishable phenomenal creation as well as the imperishable individual soul, which is part of his eternal essence. Thus, because he is beyond perishable matter and superior to the imperishable soul enveloped in Maya, he is known in this world as well as in the Vedas as the Supreme Person. So, Krishna says, they, the wise, speak of the indestructible people tree, having its root above and branches below, whose leaves are the meters or hymns. He who knows it is a knower of the Vedas. So here also, believe it or not, this is kind of what the tree of life, Kabbalism, a lot of this is kind of where it stems from, just so you all understand. This is not it's not an evil thing. It's a way of explaining your place in the universe as a soul, as a body, as compared to God and where God exists outside of the physical universe, the whole 9 yards. So, continuing. Krishna continues with, below and above spread its branches, nourishing by the gunas. Sense objects are its buds. The below in the world of men stretch forth the roots originating action. Its form is not perceived here as such, neither is it end nor its origin, nor its foundation or resting place, having cut asunder this firmly rooted peepul tree with the strong axe of non-attachment. Then that goal should be sought after, whither having gone, none returns again. Seek refuge in the primeval Purusha, whence streaming forth the ancient activity or energy. The commentary by Sivananda here. That which fills the whole world with the form as Satchidananda is Purusha. That which sleeps in this city of the body is the Purusha. Single-minded devotion, which consists of ceaselessly remembering the Supreme Being, is the surest and most potent means of attaining self-realization. Continuing, Krishna says, free from pride and delusion, victorious over the evil of attachments, dwelling constantly in the self, their desires having completely turned away, freed from the pairs of opposites known as pleasure and pain, and the deluded reach the eternal goal. Neither doth the sun illumine there, or the moon, nor the fire. Having gone thither, they return not. That is my supreme abode. An eternal portion of myself, having become a living soul in the world of life, draws to itself the five senses, with the mind for the six abiding in nature. When the Lord obtains a body, and when he leaves it, he takes these and goes with them, as the wind takes the scent from their seats, flowers, etc., presiding over the ear, the eye, touch, taste, and smell, as well as the mind. He enjoys the objects of the senses. The deluded do not see him who departs, stays, and enjoys, but they who possess the eye of knowledge behold him. The yogis, striving for perfection, behold him dwelling in the self, but the unrefined and unintelligent, even though striving, see him not. That light which resides in the sun illumines the whole world. That which is in the moon and in the fire, know that light to be mine. Permeating the earth, I support all beings by my energy, and having become the watery moon, I nourish all herbs. Having become the fire of Vaisvanara, I abide in the body of living beings, and associated with prana and apana, digest the fourfold foods. And I am seated in the hearts of all men, or of all, from me are memory, knowledge, as well as their absence. I am verily that which has to be known by all the Vedas. I am indeed the author of the Vedanta, and the knower of the Vedas am I. And the Vedanta, by the way, is essentially the Hinduistic Kabbalah. We'll get into that at some point, but two Purushas are there in this world, the perishable and the imperishable. All beings are perishable, and the Kutastha is called the imperishable. But the distinct is the supreme Purusha, called the highest self, the indestructible Lord, who, pervading the three worlds, sustains them. As I transcend the perishable and am even higher than the imperishable, I am declared as the highest Purusha in the world and in the Vedas. He who undiluted knows me thus as the highest Purusha. He, knowing all, worships me with his whole being, heart, O Arjuna. Thus, this most secret science has been taught by me, O sinless one. On knowing this, a man becomes wise, and all his duties are accomplished, O Arjuna. Chapter 16, the yoga of division between the divine and the demonical. This discourse is important and very instructive to persons who wish to attain happiness, prosperity, and blessedness, and to seekers in particular who wish to attain success in spiritual life. Lord Krishna brings out quite clearly and unmistakably here the intimate connection between ethics and spirituality, between a life of virtue and God realization and liberation. Listing two sets of qualities of opposite kinds, the Lord classifies them as divine and demonical, or undivine. So, before everyone gets all crazy with the demons, that's what it means. So, you're either with God or you're not with God. So, you get it. urges us to eradicate the latter and cultivate the divine qualities. What kind of nature should one develop? What conduct must one follow? What way should one live and act if one must attain God and obtain of divine bliss? These questions are answered with perfect clarity and very definitively. The pure divine qualities are conducive to peace and liberation, and undivine qualities lead to bondage. Purity, good conduct, and truth are indispensable to spiritual progress and even to an honorable life here. Devoid of purity and good conduct and truth, and having no faith in God or a higher reality beyond this visible world, man degenerates into two-legged beasts of ugly character and cruel actions. and sinks into darkness. Such a person becomes his own enemy and the destroyer of happiness of others as well as his own. Caught in countless desires and cravings, a slave of sensual enjoyment, and beset by 1,000 cares, his life ultimately ends in misery and in degradation. Haughtiness, arrogance, egoism and egoism led to his dire fate. Therefore, a wise person desiring success must eradicate vice, cultivate virtue. Now, this description of people who aren't the people who are devoid of purity, this entire paragraph, this is a description of the people who run our world right here. Okay, when people say there are a bunch of devil worshippers and stuff, yeah, maybe. But when you consider the fact that anything that isn't of God is opposite of God and is all of the materialistic world, then doesn't this make sense? This isn't about devil worship. This isn't about some guy with a pitchfork and horns who comes around and does whatever. I know people think the demons exist and whatever else, but it's, this is not part of, one has to understand the nature of reality if you want to understand what quote-unquote demons are. So let's just continue. This world, 3 gates lead to hell. The gates of passion, anger, and greed. Released from these 3 qualities, one can succeed in attaining salvation and reaching the highest goal, namely God. Thus, the sacred scriptures teach wisely the right path of pure, virtuous living. One should therefore follow the injunctions of the sacred scriptures that wish his welfare to be guided in his actions by their noble teachings. Krishna says, fearlessness, purity of heart, steadfastness in yoga and knowledge, almsgiving, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of scriptures, austerity and straightforwardness, harmlessness, truth, absence of anger, renunciation, peacefulness, absence of crookedness, compassion towards beings, uncovetousness, gentleness, modesty, absence of fickleness, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, purity, absence of hatred, absence of pride, these belong to one born in a divine state, O Arjuna. Hypocrisy, arrogance, self-conceit, harshness, and also anger and ignorance belong to one who is born in a demoniacal state, O Arjuna. The divine nature is deemed for liberation and the demoniacal for bondage. Grieve not, O Arjuna, for thou art born with divine properties. Commentary by Sivadananda. As Arjuna is dejected, Sri Krishna assures him not to feel alarmed at this description of the demoniacal qualities, as he is born with swatic tendencies leaning towards salvation. Continuing, Krishna says, there are 2 types of beings in this world, the divine and the demoniacal. The divine has been described at length. Hear from me, O Arjuna, of the demoniacal. The demoniacal know not what to do and what to refrain from. Neither purity, nor right conduct, nor truth is found in them. They say this universe is without truth, without a moral basis, without a God, brought about by mutual union, with lust for its cause. What else? A lot of people saying that these days, huh? Holding this view, these ruined souls of small intellects and fierce deeds come forth as enemies of the world for its destruction. Filled with insatiable desires, full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance, holding evil ideas through delusion, they work with impure resolves, giving themselves over to immeasurable cares, ending only with death, regarded gratification of lust as their highest aim, and feeling sure that that is all, bound by a hundred ties of hope, given over to lust, anger, they strive to obtain by unlawful means hordes of wealth for sensual enjoyment. This has been gained by me today. This desire I shall obtain. This is mine, and this wealth too shall be mine in the future. Quote unquote. Quote, this enemy has been slain by me, and others shall I slay. I am the Lord, I enjoy, I am perfect, powerful, and happy. Unquote. Quote, I am rich and born in a noble family. Who else is equal to me? I will sacrifice. I will give charity. I will rejoice. Unquote. Thus, deluded by ignorance. Bewildered by many a fancy, entangled in the snare of delusion, addicted to the gratification of lust, they fall into a foul hell. Self-conceited, stubborn, filled with the intoxication of pride of wealth, they perform sacrifices in name through ostentation, contrary to scriptural ordinances. Given over to egoism, power, haughtiness, lust, and anger, these malicious people hate me in their own bodies and those of others. These cruel haters, the worst among them in the world, I hurl all these evildoers forever into the wombs of demons only. Entering into demoniacal wombs and deluded birth after birth, not attaining me, they thus fall, O Arjuna, into conditions still lower than that. Triple is the gate of this hell, destructive of the self, lust, anger, and greed. Therefore, one should abandon these three. A man who is liberated from these three gates to darkness, O Arjuna, practices what is good for him and goes to the supreme goal. Commentary by Shivananda. When these three gates to hell are abandoned, the path to salvation is cleared for this aspirant. He gets the company of sages, which leads to liberation. He receives spiritual instruction and practices them. He hears the scriptures, reflects, meditates, and attains self-realization. Continuing, Krishna says, he who, casting aside the ordinance of the scriptures, acts under the impulse of desire, attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme goal. Therefore, let the scriptures be the authority in determining what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. Having known what is said in the ordinance of the scriptures, thou shouldest act there in this world. And continuing with the 17th section, the yoga of division of the threefold faith. And I think this is only 2 chapters left here. This discourse is termed the, quote, yoga of the division of the three kinds of faith, unquote. The theme of this discourse arises out of the question asked by Arjuna in verse 1, with reference to the final and closing advice of Lord Krishna in the previous discourse contained in the last 2 verses. Therein, verses 23 and 24, Arjuna asks, quote, what about those who, even though setting aside scriptural injunctions, yet perform worship in faith, unquote? The Lord replies and states that the faith of such men who ignore the injunctions of the scriptures could be either swatic, rajasic, or tamasic. This would be in accordance with the basic nature of the person himself, and conversely, as is the kind of faith, so develops the nature of man. Thus, in all things like sacrifice, worship, charity, penance, etc., these qualities become expressed in accordance with the kind of faith in which the person concerned is based. They produce results in accordance with the quality of the doer's faith. These acts, done with the right faith, lead to supreme blessedness. When done without any faith whatsoever, all these actions come barren and useless. Arjuna asks, those who, setting aside the ordinances of the scriptures, perform sacrifice with faith, what is their condition, O Krishna? That is that of sattva, rajas, or tamas? Commentary, this discourse deals with 3 kinds of faith. Okay, we already know that. Krishna says, threefold is the faith of the embodied, which is inherent in their nature, the swatvic pure, the rajasic passionate, and the tamasic dark. Do thou hear it, or hear of it. The faith of each is in accordance with his nature, O Arjuna. The man consists of his faith, as a man faith is, so is he. The sattvic or pure men worship the gods, the rajasic or the passionate worship the yakshas and the yakshasas, the others, the tamasic or the deluded, worship the ghosts and the hosts of nature spirits. Those men who practice terrific austerities not enjoined by the scriptures, given to hypocrisy and egoism, impelled by the force of lust and attachment, senseless, torturing all the elements in the body, and me also, who dwells in the body, know thou these to be of demoniacal resolves. The food also which is dear to each is threefold, as also sacrifice, austerity, and almsgiving. Hear thou the distinction of these. In commentary, a man's state for a particular food is determined according to the guna prevalent to him. Interesting. Krishna continues, food which increases life, purity, strength, health, joy, cheerfulness, which are I'm not even sure what that word is. Oleaginous and savory, substantial and agreeable are dear to the Swatic people. Foods that are bitter, sour, saline, excessively hot, dry, pungent, burning, and are liked by the Rajasic are productive of pain, grief, and disease. That which is stale, tasteless, putrid, rotten, impure, refuse is the food liked by Tamasic. I'm sure there's a whole allegorical meaning behind all that. The sacrifice which is offered by men without desire or reward, as enjoined by the ordinance scripture, with a firm faith that to do so is a duty, swatvic or pure. The sacrifice which is offered, O Arjuna, seeking a reward and for ostentation, know thou that is to be a rajasic yajna. They declare that the sacrifice to be tamasic, which is contrary to the ordinances of the scriptures, in which no food is distributed, which is devoid of mantras and gifts, and which is devoid of faith. Worship of the gods, the twice-born, the teachers, and the wise, purity, straightforwardness, celibacy, and non-injury, these are called the austerities of the body. Speech, which causes no excitement and is truthful, pleasant, and beneficial. The practice of the study of the Vedas is called austerity of speech. Commentary: it is said that the Manu Smriti, quote, one should speak what is true, one should speak what is pleasant, one should not speak what is true if it is not pleasant, nor what is pleasant if it is false. This is the ancient Dharma, unquote. To be an austerity, speech should combine all the attributes mentioned in the above verse. And interestingly enough, this is an axiom which is definitely played along in the Vedas. Continuing, Krishna says, serenity of mind, good-heartedness, purity of nature, self-control, this is called mental austerity. The threefold austerity practiced by steadfast men with the utmost faith, desiring no reward, they call sattvic. The austerity which is practiced with the object of gaining good reception, honor, and worship with hypocrisy here is said to be rajasic, unstable, and transitory. The austerity which is practiced out of a foolish notion with self-torture or for the purpose of destroying another is declared to be tamasic. That gift which is given to one who does nothing in return, knowing it to be a duty to give in a fit place and time to a worthy person, that gift is held to be sattvic. And that gift which is made with a view to receive something in return or looking for a reward or giving reluctantly is said to be rajasic. The gift which is given to the wrong place and the time to unworthy persons without respect or insult, that is declared to be tamasic. And then commentary: at the wrong place and time, at a place which is not holy, where irreligious people and beggars assemble, where wealth acquired through illegal means, such as gambling and theft, is distributed to gamblers, singers, fools, rogues, women of evil reputation, wealth that is distributed at an inauspicious time, this does not encourage the giving of alms to the poor. This does not discourage the giving of alms to the poor. Continuing, Om Tat Sat, this has been declared to be the triple designation of Brahman by what were created formerly the Brahmanas, the Vedas, and the sacrifices. Therefore, with the utterance of Aum are the acts of gifts, sacrifice, and austerity, as enjoined in the scriptures, always begun with the students of Brahman. Uttered Tat without aiming at the fruits are the acts of sacrifice and austerity, and the various acts of gifts performed by the seekers of liberation. The word sat is used in the sense of reality and of goodness, and also, O Arjuna, it is used in the sense of an auspicious act. Steadfastness and sacrifice, austerity and gift is also called sat, and also action in connection with these, for the sake of the scripture, is called sat. And whatever is sacrifice given or performed, and whatever austerity is practiced without faith is called asat, O Arjuna. It is not here or hereafter, after death. Commentary: whatever sacrifice, austerity, or charity done without being dedicated to the Lord will be of no avail to the doer in this earthly life here or in the life beyond hereafter. The Yoga of Liberation by Renunciation. The summary of the 18th discourse. The 18th discourse, which is the conclusion of the divine discourse of Lord Krishna, is in many ways a summary of the foregoing portions of the Gita. It converts in brief numerous important points dealt with in the previous discourses. Here you behold the ultimate results of the effects of the Lord's discourse to Arjuna. The drama of Arjuna's utter despondency and breakdown is finally resolved into triumphant self-mastery, strength, and bold resoluteness. Its central messages emerges as an assurance that in and through the performance of one's prospective duties in life, one can qualify for the highest liberation. If one performs action by renouncing egoism and attachment and surrendering all desires for selfish personal gain, by regarding the performance of your duties as worship offered to God, you obtain the grace of the Lord and attain the Eternal One. Significantly, this discourse opens with a question by Arjuna asking what is true sannyasa and true tyaga, renunciation. In reply to this important and crucial query, the Blessed Lord makes it clear to us that the real sannyasa, or renunciation, lies in renunciation of selfish actions, and even more in the renunciation of the desire or greed of the fruits of any action. Very clearly, we are told that selfless and virtuous action and actions conducive to the welfare of others should not be abandoned. You must engage yourself in performing such actions but renouncing actions in greed, or attachment in greed. The true and proper renunciation is giving up of selfishness and attachment while performing one's legitimate duties. This is called sattvic tyaga. We neither hate unpleasant action nor are we attacked attached to pleasurable action. As it is not possible for you to renounce all action, the renunciation of egoism, selfishness, and attachment in your activity is declared as true renunciation. Karma does not accumulate and bind one who is thus established in such inner renunciation. The divine injunction is that God must be made the sole object of one's life. This is the heart of the Gita gospel. This is the central message in its teaching, and this is the one way to your welfare here. Now Sanjaya concludes his narrative by declaring that where there is such obedience is that of Arjuna and such willing readiness to carry out the divine teaching, there surely prosperity, victory, glory, and all blessedness will prevail. Let me just double check something real quick here, make sure I'm still hearing things right. Yep, okay, good. We'll finish this up now. Last chapter. Arjuna asks, I desire to know severally, O mighty armed, the essence of truth, or the essence or truth of renunciation, O Hirikrish. They spelled it differently. Hirisheksha. That's also the abandonment, O slayer of Kesi. And Krishna says, the sages understand sannyas to be the renunciation of action with desire. The wise declare the abandonment of the fruits of all actions as tyaga. Some philosophers declare that all actions should be abandoned as an evil, while others declare that the acts of gift, sacrifice, and austerity should not be relinquished. Hear from me the conclusion or final truth about this abandonment. O best of the Bharatas, abandonment, verily, O best of men, has been declared to be of three kinds. Acts of sacrifice, gift, and austerity should not be abandoned, but should be performed. Sacrifice, gift, and also austerity are purifiers of the wise. But even these actions should be performed leaving aside attachment and the desire for rewards, O Arjuna. This is my certain and best conviction. Commentary by Sivananda. This is a summary of the doctrine of karma yoga already enunciated before. The defect in karma is not in the action itself, but in attachment and expectation of a reward. Very good distinction. Continuing, Krishna, verily the renunciation of obligatory action is improper. The abandonment of the same from delusion is declared to be tamasic. He who abandons actions on accounts of the fear of bodily trouble because it is painful, he does not obtain the merit of renunciation by doing such rajasic renunciation. Whatever obligatory action is done, O Arjuna, merely because it ought to be done, abandoning attachment and also the desire for reward, that renunciation is regarded as sattvic. The man of renunciation, pervaded by purity, intelligent, and with his doubts cut asunder, does not hate a disagreeable work, nor is he attached to an agreeable one. Verily, it is not possible for an embodied being to abandon actions entirely, but he who relinquishes the rewards of actions is verily called a man of renunciation. Commentary by Sivananda. Nature and your own nature, too, will urge you to do actions. You will have to abandon the idea of agency in the fruits of actions. Then no action will bind you. Continuing, Krishna says, the threefold fruit of action, evil, good, and mixed, accrues after death to the non-abandoners, but never to the abandoners. Learn from me, O mighty armed Arjuna, these five causes as declared in the Sankhya system for the accomplishment of all actions. The body, the doer, the various senses, the different functions of various sorts, the presiding deity, also the fifth. Whatever action a man performs by his body, speech, mind, and whether right or the reverse, these five are its causes. Now, such being the case, he who, owing to untrained in understanding, looks upon his self, with a big capital S, which is isolated as the agent, he of perverted intelligence sees not. He who is ever free from the egoistic notion of whose intelligence is not tainted by good or evil. Though he slays these people, he slayeth not, nor is he bound by the action. Knowledge, the knowable and the knower form the threefold impulse to action, the organ, the action, and the agent from the threefold basis of action. Knowledge, action, and the actor are declared in the science of the gunas, the Sakya philosophy, to be of three kinds only, according to the distinction of the gunas. Hear them also duly, that by which one sees the one indestructible reality in all beings, not separate in all the separate beings. Know thou that knowledge to be sattvat, pure. But that knowledge which sees in all beings various entities of distinct kinds of different from one another, know thou that knowledge to be rajasic, passionate. But that which clings to one single effect as if it were the whole, without reason, without foundation in truth, and trivial, that is declared to be tamasic, dark, or ignorant. An action which is ordained, which is free from attachment, which is done without love or hatred by one who is not desirous of any reward, that action is declared to be sattvic. But that action which is done by one longing for fulfillment of desires or gain with egoism or with much effort, that is declared to be rajasic. That action which is undertaken from delusion without regard to the consequence of loss, injury in one's own ability, that is declared to be tamasic. He who is free from attachment and non-egoistic, endowed with firmness and enthusiasm and unaffected by success or failure, is called sattvic. Passionate, desiring to obtain the rewards of actions, cruel, greedy, impure, moved by joy and sorrow, such an agent is said to be rajasic. Unsteady, dejected, unbending, cheating, malicious, vulgar, lazy, procrastinating, such an agent is called tamasic. Hear thou the threefold division of the intellect and firmness according to the gunas as I declared them fully and distinctly, O Arjuna. That which knows the path of work and renunciation, what ought to be done and what ought to be not done, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, that intellect is sattvic, O Arjuna. That by which one incorrectly understands dharma and adharma, and also what ought to be done and what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, that intellect, O Arjuna, is rajasic. Commentary: that which is ordained in the scriptures is dharma, that which hurls you into the abyss of ignorance is adharma. The rajasic intellect is not able to distinguish between righteous and unrighteous actions. Continuing, Krishna says, that which envelops in darkness views a dharma and as dharma, and all things perverted. That intellect, O Arjuna, is called tamasic. The unwavering firmness by which, through yoga, the functions of the mind, the life force, and the senses are restrained, that firmness, O Arjuna, is sattvic. But that firmness, O Arjuna, by which, on account of attachment and desire for reward, one holds fast to dharma, enjoyment of pleasures and earning of wealth, that firmness, O Arjuna, is rajasic. That by which a stupid man does not abandon sleep, fear, grief, despair, and also conceit, that firmness, Arjuna, is tamasic. Now hear from me, O Arjuna, of the threefold pleasures in which one rejoices by practice and surely comes to the end of pain. That which is like a poison at first, but in the end like nectar, that pleasure is declared to be sattvic, born of the purity of one's own mind due to self-realization. And I would just like to stop for a second. If you guys did listen to my video about my vision that changed my life, I did very much say something about how I realized that this horrifying, terrible moment in my life was something that I now look at as something absolutely wonderful that I needed and I cherish. So in that mind, this poison that I consider to be poison became the nectar of my life in that moment. And then what I was shown in that vision. I just wanted to throw that out there. Continuing, Krishna says, that pleasure which arises from the contact of the sense organs with the objects, which is at first like nectar and in the end like poison, that is declared to be rajasic. That pleasure which at first and in the sequel is delusive of the self, arising from the sleep, indolence, and heedlessness, such a pleasure is declared to be tamasic. There is no being on earth or again in heaven among the gods that is liberated from these three qualities born of nature. Of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and also Sudras, O Arjuna, the duties are distributed according to the qualities born of their own nature. Serenity, self-restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, and also uprightness, knowledge, realization, and belief in God are the duties of the Brahmanas born of their own nature. Prowess, splendor, firmness, dexterity, and also not fleeing from battle, generosity, lordliness are the duties of the Kshatriyas born of their own natures. Agriculture, cattle rearing, and trade are the duties of the Vaishyas, merchant class born of their own nature, and action consisting of service is the duty of the Sudra, servant class born of their own nature. Commentary: From Sivananda, when a man does his duties rightly according to his order of life, his heart gets purified as he goes to heaven. Continuing, Siva says, each man devoted to his own duty attains perfection. How he attains perfection while being engaged in his own duty, hear now. He from whom all the beings have been evolved, and by whom all this is pervaded, worshipping him with his own duty, man attains perfection. Commentary by Sivananda. Man attains perfection by worshipping the Lord through the performance of his own duty. That is, he becomes qualified for the dawn of self-knowledge. Continuing, Krishna says, better is one's own duty, though destitute of merits, than the duty of another well performed. He who does the duty ordained by his own nature incurs no sin. One should not abandon, O Arjuna, the duty to which one is born, though faulty, for all undertakings are enveloped by evil as fire by smoke. He whose intellect is unattached everywhere, who has subdued his self, from whom desire has fled, he by renunciation attains the supreme state of freedom from action. Learn from me in brief, O Arjuna, how he who attained perfection reaches Brahman, that supreme state of knowledge. Endowed with a pure intellect, controlled by the self by firmness, relinquishing sound and other objects, and abandoning both hatred and attraction. Dwelling in solitude, eating but little, with speech, body, and mind subdued, always engaged in concentration and meditation, taking refuge in dispassion, having abandoned egoism, strength, arrogance, anger, desire, and covetousness, free from the notion of mine and peaceful, he is fit for becoming Brahman. Becoming Brahman, serene in the self, he neither grieves or desires. The same to all beings, he attains supreme devotion unto me. By devotion he knows me in truth, what and who I am. And knowing me in truth, he forthwith enters into the supreme. Doing all actions, always taking refuge in me, by my grace he obtains the eternal, indestructible state or abode. Mentally renouncing all actions in me, having me as the highest goal, resorting to the yoga of discrimination, do thou ever fix thy mind on my mind. Resorting to the yoga of discrimination, do thou ever fix thy mind on me. Fixing thy mind on me, thou shalt, by my grace, overcome all obstacles. But if from egoism thou wilt not hear me, thou shalt perish. If, filled with egoism, thou thinkest, quote, I will not fight, unquote, vain is this. Thy resolve, nature will compel thee. O Arjuna, bound by thy own karma, action born by thy own nature, that which from delusion thou wishest not to do, even that thou shalt do helplessly. Excuse me. Commentary by Sivananda. Thou wilt be forced to fight because of thy nature. It will compel thee to fight much against thy will. Okay. Continuing, Krishna, the Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, O Arjuna, causing all beings his elusive power to resolve as if mounted on a machine. Fly unto him for refuge with all thy being, O Arjuna. By his grace thou shalt obtain supreme peace and the eternal abode. Thus has wisdom more secret than secrecy itself been declared unto thee by me. Having reflected over it fully, then act thou as thou wishest. Hear thou again my supreme word, most secret of all, because thou art dearly beloved of me. I will tell thee what is good. Fix my mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, bow down to me. Thou shalt come even to me. Truly do I promise unto thee, for thou art dear to me. Abandoning all duties, take refuge in me alone. I will liberate thee from all sins. Grieve not. This is never to be spoken by thee to one who is devoid of austerities, to one who is not devoted, nor to one who does not render service, nor who does not desire to listen, nor to one who cavils at me. He who with supreme devotion to me will teach this supreme secret to my devotees shall doubtless come to me. Nor is there any among men who does not dear service to me, nor shall there be another earth dearer to me than he. Commentary by Sivananda. He who hands down this Gita to my devotees does immense service to me. He is extremely dear to me in the present generation. There will be none dearer to me in the world, nor shall there be in the future also. It's a very similar statement that Jesus says also in the Bible. Continuing, Krishna says, and he who will study this sacred dialogue of ours, by him I shall have been worshipped by the sacrifice of wisdom. Such is my conviction. The man who also hears this is full of faith and free from malice. He too, liberated, shall attain the happy worlds of those righteous deeds. Has this been heard, O Arjuna, with one pointed mind? Has the delusion of thy ignorance been fully destroyed, O Dhananjaya? Arjuna responds, destroyed is my delusion, as I have gained my memory, knowledge through thy grace. O Krishna, I am firm, my doubts are gone, I will act according to thy word. Sanjaya, who is telling the story to the king, says, thus have I heard this wonderful dialogue between Krishna and the high-souled Arjuna, which causes the hair to stand on end. Through the grace of Vyasa, I have heard the supreme and most secret yoga direct from Krishna, the Lord of Yoga himself, declaring it. O king, remembering this wonderful and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I rejoice again and again. And remembering again and again also the most wonderful form of Hari, great is my wonder, O king, and I rejoice again and again. Wherever there is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, wherever there is Arjuna, the archer, there are prosperity, happiness, victory, firm policy. Such is my conviction. And that is the end of that book. So I hope you guys, I know it was kind of a dry read, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was one of these books that I've read a few times now, and I wanted to give it you guys a full reading. And because those that have never heard or read or listened to the Gita, I think it's an important book, and I'm gonna be coming back and referencing this all over the place really soon, because there is a whole lot to sort of show. So it's one of those things where it's going to play a big role into future videos, because I'm going to be putting out something really soon that's going to show a very, very close connection between the East and the West when it comes to religions. It's much closer than I had even imagined. But as it seems to always happen to me, when I'm looking for kind of information, again, with no attachment to what I'm finding, things fall right in my lap. And I had a couple of books fall into my lap in the last couple of weeks here that have really blown open this theory that I've been developing over the course since I started this channel. But I'm going to be working on that video for you guys coming up this week, so stay tuned. I'll be back probably to do some more audio readings and audiobooks and things like that coming Friday, Saturday, Sunday-ish, something like that. Otherwise, I love all of you. Thank you so much for joining me with this reading. I hope that you enjoyed it, for whatever it is. Many of the people who have never been exposed to this book, now you have been exposed to it. So hopefully it's a good thing, you know what I mean? But I'll leave that up to you guys. There is a lot of things that are definitely very similar in the ideas of Christianity and Hinduism, so to speak. There are so many aspects to this story where you could easily just switch Krishna to Shiva. Because the way that they're explained in Shaivism is identical. And so we'll look into that in the future, because that's one of the big clues. Within history, we're going to see that these ideas and the yogic practice and even the Shiva Linga spread across the entire world. And those of you who did listen to the Bhavishya Purana video I did, well, I'm going to have to go back and add some more to that. But that's an important video because that's really what that video is talking about. It's talking about the people who worshipped Shiva. That's who it's talking about, because the Vedas, or the Aryans, when they did come in, they came across the Shiva worshippers first. And these are the people who are referenced in various different names. And one of the interesting things is some of these Vedas are a lot like in the way the Old Testament is written, where it's not necessarily an actual true history of a certain people, where it's a conglomerated book put together brilliantly to give spiritual ideas and concepts, but also a kind of loose history in a way where they can kind of talk smack against some of the people who are against them, within the materialistic world. So we're going to dive deep into that, because there is something big time there that I think people should know about. And hopefully it'll make people realize that we should stop fighting amongst ourselves and realize who we really need to be kind of not fighting, but um, taking taking our spiritual energies towards and against, let's just say. And because in that fight, it's really a fight of self-preservation, a fight of self-realization, right? Because i.e., just like the Gita is telling us, people who reach these points aren't going to be affected by the trials and tribulations of life like so many other people are, which means you make better decisions, which means that you have an emotional balance, which has so many different parts, and all the fruits that come out of those things are more important to you and more valuable to you than anything else you will ever experience. And I will say that because I have experienced that in so many different ways, and continue to, as I open myself up further and further into my spiritual development. These fruits come with a force of ease that I never thought could ever exist. But there it is. So, anyways, those will be stories, personal stories for the future. I will share some more personal stories, because I think that brings a lot of this information I share with you guys into a plain understanding and a viewpoint, and where people can relate to things in a much better way than trying to pick apart religious scripts, because that can drive somebody crazy, and it has for lots of people. So thanks again for joining me. Love you all. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. If you think other people would enjoy listening to this kind of audiobook, feel free to share it with other people. Otherwise, if you are new to this channel and you enjoyed my reading, commentary, things of that nature, please subscribe and check out so much more of the work I've been doing, which is funny because so much of the stuff that I decided I was going to do early without any real plan is working itself into all the stuff that's coming real soon. And that was not by my design, let's just say. So again, much love to you all guys, and I am looking forward to releasing the first part of a much bigger project, which is going to start to expose a lot more detail. It's going to be less of a reading and more of a professionally put together video with specific points and various other things. So it'll be a more friendly video to, say, share with people who can't handle these really long type of things. So otherwise, I will see you guys then. Take it easy. Peace. Let's see if I can get my mouse to work.